The hero caught the beast in his trap. He said he hadn't eaten regular meat in a long time. The man screamed when he saw the girl. He spotted a huge boar that started eating his precious meat. The hero expected nothing different from the devil's kingdom. It wouldn't be easy, and he wondered why he lived in such a hell. This began a few days ago. The man told him he was a little late and that the land had been sold 4 days earlier. It surprised him, even though he'd been eyeing that land for a long time. After 3 years of living frugally, he had saved the required amount, but the 5 coins were now useless. The man said the coins were very dirty. The hero asked if there was any other good soil. The others told him that, unfortunately, land like that was hard to find, and he himself had only 5 gold coins. The man replied that it made no difference to him and any land would do. He would even build himself a place to sleep if she had no house. Willing to put up with some inconvenience, he accepted anything that would help him. The man said he had something in that case, worth exactly 5 coins, and that the land was quite large. A forest lay surrounded by mountains, cliffs, and the sea, far from the city. The man said no one had ever gone in, and the place was still unexplored, so there was no information about the land. Convinced he had nothing to lose, the main character decided to buy her out. He never showed any real talent. At 15, he was kicked out of his home. Immediately, he became an adventurer because it seemed cool. Reality turned out to be less pleasant. Most of these adventurers lacked combat skills. They were far from free and worked just to survive. The famous adventurers who showed up from time to time impressed him. Like them, he did odd jobs and saved the money to spend later on fleeting pleasures. At one point, he thought about quitting his profession to become an adventurer, but he had no talent as a merchant or craftsman. The hero figured it was useless and would only make things worse. Then the boy remembered that even if he wasn't a good adventurer, he was still a farmer's son, and with his own land, he could achieve something. Determined, he managed to save 5 coins after 3 years. He now owned his own land and was starting a new life. The knights asked where he was headed. These knights were soldiers from the kingdom of Estonia. The soldiers told him there was nothing ahead except their training base. He said he had bought land there. The soldiers said the area was almost unexplored and a demonic realm, and they asked to see his adventurer card. The adventurer's card showed his name and rank, and the card's material and color changed as his rank increased, but he always had the lowest rank. They told him to learn survival skills in the nearby forest before he went into the devil's nest, but he thought they were laughing at him. His land was likely in the deeper part of that forest. The demon realm was not as full of monsters as he had expected. It was pretty peaceful there. Monsters began fighting in front of him, a wild bear and a Vespa hornet, and he could not defeat them. Hidden in the bushes, he saw that everything was over. Worried at the sight of the giant monsters, the boy suddenly got lucky and was able to collect the materials he needed. The hero gained an arthropod eye, a wing, and a magic stone. Every monster type has one stone with unique properties. Monsters and demons keep these magic stones inside their bodies to control magic and power their abilities. Humans draw their magic from nature and do not have magic stones in their bodies. At least that's what he learned in the Adventurers Guild courses. This magic stone should be poisonous, but the venom in its core is missing. As the hero suspected, the sting was inside the bear. The man said he would cut the meat into pieces, take off the skin, and let it dry a little. The hero was used to that from working in a butcher's shop. He received the materials fur, meat, a poisonous hornet sting, and a bear's magic stone. He felt it was a promising start. 3 more days traveling deep into the forest brought the hero to his destination. Before him, mountains and a forest stretched out. The river marked the edge of the land. The ecosystem on the far side was different. He said everything was fine, and it was time to take the first step into a new life. He wondered if his eyes were deceiving him after seeing a local slime. Dizziness started to set in because the attack had drained his magic. Another attack would make him faint from magical exhaustion. Attack the core at the slime's center to defeat it. He planned to strike the core with punches and attacks from a distance. At first he missed, his hoe completely dissolved, and the hero cursed. After defeating the slime, it splashed liquid onto his face, and he was pleased with his success. Wasting 1 wild bearskin didn't seem very profitable, but he got the material magic slime stone. This was no time to be upset, and he needed to set up camp before dark. The hero said that with a few branches and leaves, he could make a makeshift tent, and the forest had many plants he had never seen before. Cutting a palm leaf released a slimy liquid. The other plants were also unsuitable for building a tent. The hero came upon a field of flowers deep in the jungle. He saw monster bones. Although he disliked the place, he said he'd deal with it later and set up camp first. Night had already fallen. The hero said things were mostly normal for now, but he was very hungry. He was glad he had taken wild bear meat with him. The plants and animals in that forest are complex. Tomorrow he must start research to determine what to do next. Seeing the large, sparkling eyes, he felt afraid. There was a green tiger. She warned him that if he met the other man unarmed, he should be prepared to die. A man threw poisoned meat at the tiger. It didn't work at all because the tiger preferred fresh meat. The animal ran after him to attack. The tiger came close to touching him, but it failed. He got it exactly right. It felt scary, so he firmly decided he was done. On the first day of his new life, so much had already happened that he had no hope for the future. Sounds grew louder as the monster got unmistakably closer. The hero realized he could not win the fight and had to retreat because it was too dangerous. The boy decided to go back to the village and start over. There was no option like that for him. People always told him he wasn't needed and would only get in the way. Being an adventurer was very boring. The hero knew running away would not help, and he had no other choice. Only his life remains there, and that wasteland is everything he owns. A tiger was closing in. If the man's plan failed, he would die on the spot. In the end, things worked out, and he realized that the flower garden was, after all, a natural trap. Those mysterious white flowers had a strong sleep-inducing effect. Coming down, he covered his nose. He worried he might breathe them in. Victorious, the hero received the green tiger materials and the magic stone. He felt he was going to starve. He hadn't even had time to eat when it all happened. The man said green tiger meat is disgusting. Lying down, he said he wanted something tasty to eat. Being in the new territory was hard for him, but he will do everything he can to hold out a little longer. That place is his private hell. Nothing made sense, and he didn't know where he was or what was happening. It was crowded, and he couldn't tell what kind of place it was. The man thought it was a strange dream. Since childhood, the hero had dreamed this same dream countless times, and still wondered what it meant, as the slime had already grabbed his bag. A man took an axe and chopped his own heart. Relieved that his bag wasn't damaged, the hero felt he was getting stronger. He chose to keep exploring that hell. It was his land, so he should at least know where everything was. He spotted a girl who looked lifeless. Her upper body was a snake. It had to be a lamia. Lamia are quite strong. A poisoned Vespa hornet stinger was lodged in her mouth. Now he realized it was because of the poisonous needles the man threw at the green tiger yesterday. Despite what people say, he was lucky and had to remove the magic stone from the girl. He began exploring the suimonggrass today. The hero spotted mushrooms and wondered if they were edible, but in that hell it was too dangerous to approach even harmless plants. A man caught a green rat and named it a forest rat, then he tossed it into the mushrooms. The rat stopped moving. The hero realized the spores caused paralysis, noted it was another natural trap, and said it was impossible to live there. Realizing he had no combat training, he decided traps were the only way to fight monsters. He resolved to survive. At last, the protagonist finished digging the hole and placed the suman flower and the mushroom inside. The man decided not to move on because he was very hungry. The hero hoped he could catch something big tomorrow. He woke up and said it was time to find out what was happening there. A man spotted a huge boar, and even while it slept, he still could not defeat it. The hero decided he had to finish him off as soon as possible. Cutting him up takes the hero a whole day. A blue snake was inside the monster's belly, and the man thought it was a very strange ecosystem. Night had already fallen when he received the boar's fangs, fur, meat, and a magic stone. The hero realized he hadn't eaten real meat in a long time, and it tasted delicious. In that state, his axe and knife were completely dull and useless. Seeing the bones were strong, he decided to try using them. It was heavy but relatively easy to handle. He was making an axe now, and when the resin hardened it would be as hard as a rock, so he would pour it into a clay mold he had made. He fashioned an axe from tree resin and a sword from boar bone. Morning has arrived. He's so absorbed in making tools he doesn't even feel tired. The protagonist set out to build another trap. The protagonist finished much faster than the day before. He decided he was either getting stronger or just gaining experience, and assumed it was all about the meat. Fortunately, he was like this now, because before he couldn't get any stronger no matter how hard he tried. He spotted a cave. The hero noticed a lit wall torch, realized someone lived there, and apologized. The man noted how deserted it looked. yet he found signs that someone had lived there before. He discovered a diary filled with notes on monsters, edible plants, and medicinal herbs. That information was essential to survive in those parts. He was surprised to find ruins in the demonic realm, but had no details about them. Brute force and ordinary magic won't help because a giant monster appears every 3 months, so you must master space-time magic, and the common sense advice in modern magic books won't work, as ancient magic circles are far more advanced than modern ones. Unknown explored that place and regretted being unable to solve the mystery of those lands. Shelves of unfamiliar metals filled the warehouse, and the knives and armor looked like the stranger's own work, so the hero concluded he was an experienced adventurer. Curiosity about the stranger ran high, but some things will remain secret, and most of all he should be glad he found such a shelter. The cave's interior looked undisturbed, suggesting it might be relatively safe. The main character chose to move there. He set out to build a house around the cave as a base, hoping it would become a beautiful place over time. His dreams of having his own home were starting to come true. First, he should clear that neglected room, then repair what can be restored and make what is missing from the materials on hand. He said he believed his actions would be enough. A man built a new home for himself, that's it. Naturally, no one welcomes him. He is perfectly content to be free of unpleasant human relationships. The knight said they'd kill him as soon as a breach opened. Only a wild bear was missing. There was nothing they could do. One warned that if they didn't remove him now, he might reveal himself to the public. They had no other choice. The stranger asked whether they were having any problems and whether they wanted his help. They asked him who he was. They were told the wild bear was not very strong in the devil's kingdom. He asked permission to fight him. Watch for wide swings, avoid the hard parts of the skull, and aim for soft spots. The hero greeted them and asked whether they were from the training camp. Saying he lived nearby, he asked if they had any wheat or vegetable seeds and offered to trade monster meat or magic stones for them. The soldier said he had some at the campsite, and the hero suggested they go. He would also like to trade materials for coal and paper if possible. He was glad he had managed to get everything he wanted. He said he was starting to adjust to life in the demon realm. Still, many places remained unexplored, so he needed to draw a proper map. The soldier's confusion puzzled him. The hero believed he had grown strong, but that may have been natural since he lived surrounded by powerful, dangerous enemies. Absorbed in hunting, the boy hadn't washed in a long time, and the soldier may have been put off by his dirty appearance, so he assumed the boy smelled bad. The hero said the arrival of vegetable seeds meant it was time to take up farming. Seeing a huge turtle, he started driving it away because it could ruin his field. She threw a swamp at him, but he was upset because he had just washed. With its leg stuck in the swamp, the turtle lost its balance. To him, it was only a piece of meat. The meat was tasty, but the soup was even better. The stranger's notes mentioned that turtle. It was a smoked turtle you could catch and keep as a pet. This creature is among the weakest in the demonic realm. The protagonist decided it was time to continue exploring the lands, and his goal today is to find the sea. The boy had dried so much meat that it used up nearly all the salt, so he planned to ask the soldiers if they had any salt. Mapping let the heroes see the river from the top of the hill and find the sea by following it downstream. It seemed the demonic kingdom ended there, he said. All that remained was to extract salt from the seawater. At the shore, he noticed something strange. A girl lay there, and he checked her breathing. The hero discovered she was a demon. He believes they lost the war to humans long ago and then vanished. He figured he didn't need any more problems. Her breathing was weak, and he had no way to treat her. This land was his, and he was not responsible for the demons who crossed the border. The hero decided to pretend he had seen nothing because he had only come to make salt. A dinosaur chased him, and he couldn't make sense of his own actions. The man tested the leaves on a wood rat, and they tasted awful but restored his strength. You thought he'd done all he could. He was running late and needed to find food. The hero offered the girl some food, and she accepted. The man said he did not know where she came from, only that she was now in a demonic kingdom on his land, and asked her to leave once she finished eating the crab. Speaking in a language he did not understand, she called him Makyo. He said it wasn't his name, but she kept calling him that, and he resigned himself to it. He said she could call him that, and asked her name. She replied that her name was Till. When she turned to him, he asked if she had enough food and apologized for not having any left. The man asked how she had arrived. He chose to communicate with pictures. The hero said he understood almost nothing, but it looked like the demons had fought with the girl, and she ran away. He asked whether she was interested in his work. He said he boiled seawater to extract salt. The girl used a great deal of magic. The hero asked her to wait and whether she meant to tend the fire. He noticed events were starting to unfold in a strange way. If she planned to stay in the demonic realm for a long time, she could ask him to teach her magic instead of paying rent. He wound up with a lot of salt. Deciding working together would be more efficient, he woke the girl and told her to follow him. The hero said she could stay at his house until they built a boat to bring her back. She reminded him of how he had been when he first arrived there. His house surprised her. Owning the house began to make him resent it. The man showed her the oven he bakes bread in, the forest rat he used for experiments, and told her not to touch anything. She fell asleep at his place, and he thought she was very tired. The hero brought her along because he thought she would be useful, but it could become a serious problem. If anyone finds out there's a demon hiding there, he'll certainly be arrested. He still believes the girl should go. Living in the demonic realm suits him. Refusing to wait until morning, the hero woke her up and tried to explain everything. Planning what to say next, the boy set in motion the strange life of a man and a demon in the demonic realm. He told her she was too weak and asked how she could survive in the devil's kingdom. He admitted he couldn't protect her all the time, and apparently nothing could be done. The hero recommended beginning with training. He advised her to start by catching as many forest rats as she could. They moved on to shooting practice. He asked her to stop shooting such big balls and to make them smaller and hit them harder. He told her to aim properly and asked why she had her eyes closed. A single mistake would finish her, so he told her to shoot. She hit the target. The protagonist asked her not to make that smug face, not knowing why it bothered him. Exhausted after defeating only one green monkey before sunset, the girl needed him to babysit her. The boy asked her to teach him how to do magic. Something flowed from Till's hands and then returned like magic. A slightly strange feeling crept over him. Surprised by how much mana he had, the boy decided it would be wasteful not to use it. Wondering where the mana came from, the hero assumed it was because he had started living there. The man assumed he could use magic in battle, but he hadn't thought it through. The hero said he would try using household magic. He did something and she exhaled. Magic is an image. He said that after hearing this, it means you can create anything with magic. He decided to use the image and gained a magical flow that was small, weak, and useless in battle. The man said they should try to kill as many monsters as possible. He showed her the route they would take today. The protagonist suggested that if she was afraid she could fly up with wind magic, and he asked whether it was hard to control, adding that she would then have to climb up. She turned to him and he told her not to scream because it was part of the training. A big moth appeared and he told her to try to handle it herself. Till encountered a paralyzing toxin. Holding a magic stone with a large moth inside, the boy asked if she was okay. He decided to add a magic stone to the cane that had a paralyzing effect. The idea worked, and the girl began to grow quickly from that moment. She used a combination of paralyzing and offensive spells. Over the next few days, she used the paralyzing combo to hunt monsters. Till changed as she got used to the devil's realm. He was glad her movements were getting faster, but he still had not learned a quick spell because forming the image took time. A man spotted a group of demons. There were too many of them, but the girl fought them off with her cane. After that, they faced an enemy stronger than they could handle. Paralysis had no effect on him either. The man figured the monster wouldn't let them escape so easily. He stayed one step ahead. The protagonist asked if the girl had used magic. The girl shook her head. The man assumed he had used some kind of magic. An image formed in his mind. A mysterious board he had seen many times in dreams about another world had taught him many different magical images. The man thanked her and asked how to use it, and she explained it to him. He told her he didn't understand anything. Today the boy is practicing magic again and thinking about making a magic blade, but a knife made of special tree resin would not be suitable for that role. Materials like hellbug horn and monster claw were tried, but none worked. That time he had to do something powerful enough. The man wondered why the girl was making noise. Demons do not have that technique. The hero said he might have made an amazing discovery. He asked what was on the plate. It held raw meat and nuts. The man said it wasn't a dish and he would cook it now. The main character baked bread, and the girl enjoyed eating it. Pleased she liked it, he welcomed the help since making a map and other work would benefit from another pair of hands, though one day he would have to send the girl home. The protagonist told her to clear the forest. They would build a boat so she could return home whenever she wanted. He said they'd waste a lot of time that way, and if he had a normal weapon, he could use it as a magic sword. A sudden idea came to him, and he said he'd be back soon. The hero chose to use the stranger's weapon and infused it with wind magic. That turned out to be a bad idea. The ball conducted magic too well, and strange objects were dangerous, so he put them aside for now. They cut enough wood for a boat, but smoothing it with a plane was difficult. He thought the wood was damp, so there was nothing to be done except to dry it. He decided to practice using magic on different parts of the body. Approaching him, the girl said she wanted to go kill monsters, and he told her to be careful. Evening had already arrived. Time flies when you're focused. She baked bread. If you can eat and sleep whenever you want, that's a good life. Opening his eyes, he asked what the noise was as it suddenly grew colder. The monster grabbed the girl and the boy. The hero decided they would escape as soon as they went below. He said the girl left him with no choice. The protagonist struck with an earth magic fist. He will channel wind magic to his feet to soften the landing. Till set a trap using water magic. She still swallowed some water, and he helped her. With the sun already setting, they were out of supplies in a rocky, sandy area. A sandstorm began, so they had to stay there overnight. When the girl developed a high fever, the man assumed it was a cold and did not think he could find any medicine there, so he wondered what to do. The protagonist believed he could learn something from the stranger's diary. The demon resembles old men. The women have more chiseled faces. The magic stone cures colds. He saw demons sitting on the Trent, which lies in a swampy area far to the north. A man made a canopy from a wyvern's wing. The hero asked the girl to wait a moment. Channeling magic into his legs, he ran normally. He had to find the magic stone fast. The monster attacked him, but he fought back and said he had no time. He handed the girl a magic stone. The strange black aura was cold. He recovered, and the guy was happy about it. He told her to stop clinging to him. Her horns kept rubbing against his wounds. Meanwhile, at the edge of the Devil's Kingdom, a girl was exploring an unfamiliar area. Today, the protagonist said he was working in the field. He considered using magic to build an irrigation system. A girl approached him. When she asked what to do, he said they should wait and see. Knights attacked the slime core, using magic as bait. They were startled by the strange monster. The knight wondered why the slime was so strong. The boy realized the fire magic was only a distraction, but it was useless because they could not penetrate the core. The knights were utterly exhausted, and half of them had lost their magic. The main character introduced himself as the owner of that land and said he needed to say a few words. He asked what they were doing, and they wanted to know who he was. The man said they were adventurers called White Lightning who came to that land to fight powerful monsters. The strangers told him not to worry and that they would exterminate all the monsters in that hole. The man held up his adventurer card, but the protagonist said he did not care, called the area private property, and asked him not to go there without permission. The adventurer warned him to watch his language because they were the strongest party in the city. He asked why they had to die, and the man warned them not to go any further or they would get into trouble. Seeing the small dragon, the knights immediately ran. Seeing the priestess unconscious posed another problem for the main character. About to sell the materials he'd gathered at the training camp, he decided to bring the girl there and invited Till to walk with him. The protagonist asked her to cover up the demons, horns, and skin. He wanted to channel magic into his legs to move forward. The man agreed and said he had come to trade. The stranger recognized him and asked about the girl beside him. The hero said Till was a bit odd but useful and could now gather even more materials. He gave magic stones and materials and said he found the girl along the way. The man said the sword the main character forged himself is simply amazing. A blade made from green tiger bone is very rare. One said he had also tried to make a staff from a magic stone. The other said he didn't know much about it, but the materials were good. The main character said he wanted to buy sewing and woodworking tools, an iron sword, and some women's clothing. He added that if possible, he would not refuse the Book of Spells and Space and Time. He said he wasn't sure they had it, and that even if they did it would be too expensive, and the other man asked if it could be ordered from the capital. The merchant warned you'd need to pay up front, and that many of the books are fake, so he thinks it would be easier to go there himself. The main character said he would try to find her himself in that case. The man said he would order the clothes and other supplies and ask him to come in a week. The next day, the protagonist decided to begin searching for the ruins mentioned in the stranger's diary. They decided to go on a treasure hunt. The stranger left no note about where the ruins he needed were, and he did not even have a complete map of the demonic realm. To the west lies the entrance to the demonic kingdom, to the east are the seas the girl sailed from, and to the north are mountains and impassable terrain. The man decided they needed to head south. Barely out of the forest, they found themselves in a desert. The protagonist thought he was mistaken because there was nothing there. A sandworm attacked them. The diary said that although it was large, the monster was fairly weak. Even the magic sword failed, so the protagonists said they had to run. Mukio until escaped the sandworm, and the man cannot understand how PJ could call the monster a weakling, so he wonders who PJ is, and after a short silence he decides to check if the diary describes a way to defeat it. Back in the cave, Mukio starts studying the diary. After a while the hero says he seems to have found it and realizes PJ's weapon was different from his because the man used magic circles. He reasons aloud that the diary shows different magic circles, so he tries to copy them, draws a circle, and thinks he now needs to channel magic into it. The heroes are shocked and scream when the explosion goes off. Mukio channels his power into another magic circle, and the stone splits in two, surprising the boy who studies it and asks aloud whether the inscription really cuts through space. Mukio remembers the man's belongings. The hero realizes that if he looks closely, PJ has hidden magic circles in everything to make them hard to notice. Thinking again about who the man really was, he is sure the man was an excellent magician. The hero wonders why the man chose to die here alone. Another man says aloud he understands nothing, then notices the hero's thoughtful face and, making a deafening V sound, asks if Mashio is sad, and the hero remains silent. The next morning they return to the same place, and the hero takes PJ's sword, saying it will work in the desert but they must first stock up on water. As the heroes near the river, Till notices something and taps Mukio on the shoulder, calling out. Mukio cries and turns toward where the girl pointed. Surprised, he sees the girl from yesterday standing in the water. She stares at them. The hero thinks it's that priestess again and asks out loud what she wants. The priestess says she has left the White Lightning. She is Jennifer Volkov and then asks to stay here. Mukio refuses her offer. The girl is visibly surprised and the heroes return to their work. Jennifer raises her voice and insists they will need a healer for injuries or illness. Responsible for the squad's consumables, she asks to be allowed to stay. The hero refuses again. He already told her everything. The priestess begs because she does not want to stay in the camp. Mukio cannot see why she needs this, and the guy groans aloud because he already guessed. He assumes she was kicked out rather than leaving, and she is surprised, blushes, and stammers while trying to convince him it does not matter. He says that's not true and that this is his land, so he cannot leave her here without knowing all the details. Jennifer pauses for a moment and presses her lips together. Tears in her eyes, she begins to shake and says her former comrades told her she is no longer needed, so she asks to be allowed to stay here. Mukio says he does not understand why she needs this and asks why she does not return to her homeland. The priest says she has no home and is an orphan, but the hero refuses to let her stay here, saying this place is hell for people like her and urging her to find a better place. Jennifer firmly rejects that assumption. This land is exactly what Jennifer was looking for. The hero is not pleased at all. The priestess keeps saying nobody is here, so no one will betray her. The hero shouts he is here and this land is his. Not convinced, the girl nudges him and offers to take her to his camp. Mashio screams even louder, certain she must be deaf. He explains that if she stays, she must pay rent and keep quiet about anything she sees in the Devil's Kingdom, and she quickly agrees, saying she has some money. Back at camp, Mukio warns the newcomer to watch for monsters. The priestess sings cheerfully. A monster immediately attacks her. She collapses, and the hero sighs heavily because he had warned her. In the cave, the hero decides he does not want the girl to die and become a monster, so he lets her stay here for a while and plans to send her back later. A knock sounds at the door. Jennifer screams and keeps pointing at it, unable to understand why a demon is here. The hero realizes she promised not to make a fuss. The demoness, drowning out the ringing, tells Mukio about the bread. Horrified, the priestess moves away from her. After eating, the hero stands and says he will water the fields. The priestess, confused, calls after him, and getting no response, asks Till if his name is Mukio. Still stunned that she saw a demon, Jennifer runs after him and asks whether they are dangerous. Mashio doesn't see the danger. Maybe she's a little slow, but they get along well. The girl says they are enemies and that if the guards find out, he will be arrested. The hero objects, turns around and says they were enemies more than 100 years ago, and wonders whether the church teaches persecuting those who have done nothing. The priestess denies this and looks for a counterbalance. The man says Till taught him magic for rent, pours water on the fields to demonstrate, and adds that it turned out pretty good. He warns Jennifer that if she can't pay the rent, he'll throw her out. The girl proudly says she has 10 gold pieces and asks whether that will cover a month. The hero, surprised by the 10 gold pieces, says it's enough. The girl hands him a slip of paper. Makio examines it, surprised, and asks if it is a check. He says it is not gold, and the priestess smiles and agrees because the check is worth 10 gold coins. The hero says this will not do. Jennifer grins because she expected nothing different from people in the wilderness. In the capital, this is normal practice. She says the check must be taken to a currency exchange, and the gold can be exchanged there. Makio replies that they're not in the capital, and there are no exchange offices here. The priestess bristles with anger, and the girl says she understands everything, asks whether he truly needs a worker, and offers to wash dishes, gather firewood, or starts to say "fi" before breaking off. Then she withdraws into herself and mutters that she'll do anything, believing she will one day become the highest official in this ideal country and take revenge on them. The hero looks at her in bewilderment, thinking she suddenly got angry and began talking about revenge. Then he scratches his head and says out loud that he knew it. Spreading his arms wide, he asks her to leave because she does not belong here. Jennifer doesn't understand what he's talking about and wonders whether he did something wrong. The hero confirms this and now understands why she was kicked out of the party. The reason is that she doesn't listen. He says she gets angry when she doesn't get her way, and here things rarely go the way you want, because life in the devil's kingdom is not a bed of roses. The priestess TSKS trembles with shame, then turns and leaves, puffing. The girl packs her things and leaves the cave, while someone else continues eating bread and asks if she is leaving. The man confirms this, saying she came for revenge, that there is no place for someone like her here, and she should start over in the capital. The next day dawns. Makio says they will keep exploring the desert today, until jumps for joy. The hero remembered to take PJ's sword with him. At this point he remembers you can lose your bearings in the desert, so he catches a creature that will be useful on the return trip. He shows a reef bird that instinctively returns home. The girl beams and amid deafening ringing, says that Makio has foreseen everything, and the hero smiles in response. Stretching his legs, he turns and suggests they speed up. Someone at the till calls his name, distracting him, and he stops abruptly. The man asks what else happened. The demoness points to the rocks below. A girl lies among them. Jennifer lies unconscious, her body covered in wounds. The hero checks her and finds she's breathing, but her leg is broken. Sighing, he says he must leave the priestess for one more night until the deafening ringing stops. They bring the girl to a cave, and Makio tells the demoness he used restoration magic to heal her wounds, so he believes everything is fine. Not wanting to drag out the search any longer, Till says they will go to the desert as planned. The girl silently agrees with him. They run toward the desert again. The man thinks the priestess will leave on her own once she understands what happened. They both spot something in the sand. Till calls the hero by name and points to a small rise in the sand. It is an earthworm. A massive monster roars at the heroes. Makio draws his sword, determined to deal with the worm before exploring the desert in peace, and now relies on PJ's blade. Using this weapon, the man instantly slices the monster into many pieces. He is both pleased and surprised by the sudden killing. Till is frightened and once again deafened by the ringing, says it's fine. The hero admires what a damn good sword it is and now understands why PJ considered such monsters weak. Flipping through the journal, he notes the other desert monsters seem just as weak, and though the criteria are interesting, there is a problem. The sign "Never touch poisonous plants" confuses him, so he looks around and sees no plants at all. Makio now suggests they do some research. The heroes move through the sands, sheltering behind rocks from the storm. At that moment they see a bright glow and an object in the sky. The man, surprised, asks what it is and then repeats his last word. Seeing the island suspended in the sky and held by a chain, the hero recognizes the ruins from PJ's diary and says out loud they should move faster. Together they approach the huge chain. He can hardly believe it. Touching the chain, he notes how big it is and that he doesn't even know what it's made of. Makio suggests climbing onto the island. Till supports him in everything. They start climbing. The boy pants, realizing with horror that it's harder than he thought. Still sweating, the hero realizes his training in the demonic realm was not enough and the challenge is still very difficult. Then Till screams and magic swirls around the girl. Makio looks back and realizes she tried to use magic to make things easier, but it didn't help because he had already tried and suffered a blowback from the chain. At first they could stick to it with magic, but now it is absorbing that magic. His mana is running out fast. The hero wants to know who made it. Now they must solve the mystery. The heroes press on in their ascent. already far from shore and nearly at the island. Barely breathing, the man says they are almost there. The exhausted woman, fighting the ringing in her ears, repeats his last word. Their hands are already on the ground. After struggling up the island, they collapse from exhaustion. Makio is relieved they finally made it, and Till says it was very hard. Surveying the area, the hero assumes the scene ahead is a city. Looking around the island, the man sees what could be houses, furniture, or other signs of cultural life and keeps looking, because it feels more like an abandoned place than ruins. Peering into a house, they find no human remains or signs of a struggle, and Makio realizes the whole island is uninhabited. He keeps thinking out loud and says it seems they just vanished. Till watches the hero. They spot something nearby. The man wonders whether it is a grave. He studies the inscription closely. The stone reads, "Here lies Peter Jefferson." The man shouts in disbelief that this is true. Tilly gives him a questioning look, and Makio believes PJ is buried here, but if this is his grave, questions remain. We need to know whose skeleton was in the cave then. The hero chuckles, says he doesn't understand anything, and notes it's getting dark so they'll have to spend the night here. The mysteries only grow. They find a house and settle in. The hero cannot fall asleep because he is shivering from the cold, not expecting the temperature at that height to be so low. That wakes the girl, and he asks if he can cuddle up to her to warm up. The girl hugs him happily, and cutting through the ringing, says these are hugs. The hero shouts that he didn't mean that at all. At the end of the journey, the heroes let the bird in. It circles briefly, then finds the right direction, and Makio says it's all over. With nothing else interesting on the flying island, they decided to return to the cave. They ran home quickly. Till lowers his hands in exhaustion as she shouts over the ringing, saying it is very hard for her. The hero spits, and now he has sand all over him. The man suggests using magic to heat the bath. They start eating bread, and the hero sinks onto the bed with a heavy sigh before noticing something. He cries out in surprise when he sees Jennifer lying on the bed, dirty and wounded. Bewildered, the hero asks why she is still here. The girl gets up and Makio inspects her more closely, noting the priestess's broken fingers and fever. He then calls out loudly for Till. A demoness approaches Jennifer and uses healing magic. Then the hero repeats his question about why the demoness is still here. Jennifer looks away, embarrassed. Hugging her legs, she says she couldn't get out after entering the forest because monsters and plants attacked, and she quickly got lost, and Makio thinks it was the forest's baptism that quickly humbled her. He asks aloud why she didn't use restoration magic, since she's a priestess, and she replies that she used it so often she ran out of mana. Sighing, the hero says he's very tired and will just go to bed. The man asks the girl to tend the fire. Jennifer, puzzled, asks whether he means her. He replies that it is not difficult and she just has to work off the food she ate. The next morning, the hero wakes up and stretches and yawns. His gaze lands on the girl. The priestess sits opposite the fire, staring at it without blinking. The hero says she has really been watching the fire the whole time. Blushing, Jennifer says she was completely helpless when she arrived and couldn't even get out. The man sighs, scratches his head, and reaches for one of the staffs. He hands her the paralyzing cane and tells her he will give it to her. It will let her paralyze the monsters and reach the exit by the stream. Surprised, she holds out a trembling hand, then quickly pulls it back. Kneeling, the priestess promises to pay for the accommodation and asks the hero to let her stay here for a while. The hero is very surprised by this. The girl keeps asking. She knows she is not good enough, but here she has realized her weakness. The priestess bows her head even lower and says that if she just leaves without trying, nothing will change. Makio asks in return if she wants to change and brings up her talk of revenge against her former comrades, and Jennifer remains silent as she considers these questions. She explains she became a priestess after her parents abandoned her. Even the church sisters told her to live freely and gently pushed her out. Following their advice, she became an adventurer but was banished from there as well. Jennifer calls revenge a convenient label for justification. In truth, no one needs her, and she refuses to admit her weakness. The hero listens quietly. He asks why she needs to stay here. She quickly gets up and says it's because they both live here. The hero is surprised because he did not expect that answer. The priestess keeps cheerfully saying she does not care if anyone needs her and just lives freely in these harsh lands. Her smile grows brighter as she says it's really cool. Makio has no words to reply. Bowing again, the girl asks to be taught how to live an adventurous life and pleads with the hero for help. Screaming, the man says he doesn't understand what adventures she's talking about, and he's just wandering around trying to explore his lands. He turns away quickly, calms himself, and lets her do what she wants, asking only that she not drag him into it, and she looks up in surprise. She smiles again because everything is fine now. Jennifer quickly turns and asks Till to teach her how to bake bread. The demoness keeps eating the bread, drowning out the ringing, and asks again. Still confused, Jennifer takes her hand and calls Mashio. The hero thinks the girls are finding a common language very quickly. Quickly settling in, the priestess places a blanket in the niche and asks if, since he let her stay for a while, she may use the spot as her bed, and the boy replies. He feared he looked like he planned to live here alone and wondered where he had gone wrong. Jennifer then said she had forgotten something, took out a coin, and added that although the advance was modest, at least it was something. Mashio examines the advance and says this is the first time he has seen such an old coin. It belonged to a zombie woman, she says, the only monster she could defeat. The man now understands everything and knows things have changed. Jennifer stayed with them for a reason he could never understand, and in the evening the hero was planing wood with a knife. The priestess asks what they're doing, and Machio says they're making a cane to sell at the training camp, adding that it may not look like much but it works, while the girl keeps examining the items. She screams that everything is completely wrong, and the hero is frightened by the sudden rush of emotion. Jennifer inspects the cane and asks whether it has a paralyzing effect. The man confirms it and asks why she cares, and the priestess says it is a very good weapon for debuffing, not a cheap trinket. The heroes smile sheepishly. Machio scratches his head and stammers, asking whether it's true. The heroes leave the cave as Jennifer happily waves and wishes them luck, and the boy and girl watch quietly. Till, trying to block the ringing in his ears, asks whether the woman will stay with him. Machio says she will because she does not intend to leave. The demoness asks why. They start running. As they run, the hero says he does not know whether she wants to stay. The girl answers happily that she understands, because Till will now have a girlfriend. Machio falls silent, feeling that these women are somehow pushing him around. They are now approaching a human settlement. During the conversation, the man says he sold the hero's cane for a high price and wonders whether he could have gotten more. The man says he can, rummages through his things, and explains the hero was looking for spellbooks, couldn't find the right tome, but he has something. Then the man puts a book with a pentagram on the table and says he has something, and Machio picks up the book, reads the title A Beginner's Guide, and begins to study it. The hero believes it describes the most basic magical effects in circles. It's not much, but at least he can study the basics better. A man says he will take her in exchange for his goods. The hero says goodbye. That day he buys boat, building tools and women's clothes. He spends the next day studying the manual. Mokio concludes that with those magic circles on PJ's gear, he can control fire, water, earth, and wind, but a problem remains. Realizing most are unusable, he writes them down on paper for future use. The priest slips around the corner. Noticing the hero reads a lot, she asks whether he does not fight monsters. Machio turns his head at her voice. He says he must find a way to defeat them. Each has their own adventures. Jennifer looks at him without speaking, then says it is so and walks slowly through the cave, glancing back. The girl returns and remembers she forgot to thank him for getting women's clothes for them. He listens quietly and without turning his head, says it was just a coincidence. Sounds come from the forest as a young adventurer carrying a hammer approaches. Till runs toward the hero, calling his name and waving at him happily. Blood covers the girl and a paralyzing staff is in her hands. Machio asks what happened and why she is covered in blood. The girl says it is the blood of a smoked turtle. She rummages through her pockets, then asks him to look at the stone she found. The boy says it is definitely not a stone because it has a lightning pattern and must be man-made, but when he uses magic nothing happens, and Machio starts studying the diary again. He finds something here, points to a similar lightning drawing on the page about the ruins, asks Till where she found it, and Till says it was in the lake. Pointing to Jennifer, collapsed from exhaustion, she says she was the one who taught her to swim. Machio watches silently. Machio says there may be ruins at the bottom of the lake, so they need to explore. They head to the right place and the hero prepares. Removing his top, he warms up and says he's off, then uses light magic on his hand and dives into the water as the girls watch, sinking deeper and deeper. Small fish swim around him, but then a huge one appears. Machio notices and immediately uses magic, thinking she should receive it. He lands a massive blow that wounds the monster, then dives deeper, deciding the fight is too hard here and it's better to use magic to create a water current and descend further. Creating a stream, the hero notices something is wrong and curses. Realizing the current he made stirred up the silt so nothing can be seen. Turning this to his advantage, he uses magic to create more water flows to wash away any silt from the ruins. A man steps out. Till asks how it went, and Machio says there is nothing visible there now. Putting on a t-shirt, he says he thought there might be ruins there, so he dug up the bottom and decides to dive there again when the water clears. He then notices someone approaching them. The girl with the hammer is there. Jennifer springs up and calls the man's name, but he stays silent at first. Greeting the newcomer, he asks what brought her to the Devil's Kingdom. Apologizing, she says she only heard that people live here and hurried over to them. The hero groans. A water monster lunges at the girl, screaming. Terrified, she drops her weapon. The heroes stand silent, watching her struggle. Till calls over the ringing to ask whether everything is okay and whether she needs help, and Makio says to wait a little, because he thinks it is a man, and that it will be easier to save him when he starts to drown. Now only a trembling hand breaks the water's surface. The hero realizes he can do it now. He grabs the drowning man by his clothes. Mashio pulls the stranger out. She coughs and spits out water, and the man is surprised to see a girl in front of him. Pulling her onto the shore, he tells her that if she's going to wander the devil's realm, she should have been better prepared. It's no place for someone who can't even handle mucus. The girl, still coughing, asks for forgiveness. Having heard they make high-quality canes, she came here to buy some, and everyone listens attentively. Mashio now understands everything, but the canes are sold at the training camp. A stranger begs him, saying she really needs the canes and asking him to sell them to her. The hero studies her in silence, then agrees and asks if she has anything to trade for them, since he does not need the money. She asks to look through her backpack to see if they could find something useful. He studies the items thoughtfully. The book catches his eye, and flipping through it, he asks whether it is a history book and what kind of history it covers. The stranger says it should contain the history of these lands. Then she mentions flying islands and monsters taller than mountains, and thinks the author clearly embellished it. Makio keeps studying the book carefully, thinking she must be wrong because it is probably true. He says out loud he will trade 10 canes for this history book. The girl stutters and asks if she heard correctly that it is 10, and she says that would be great. The hero says he will take the book and bring her 10 canes when she returns. Worried, she asks him to wait. The offer is too good and she is unsure when she can come back. Mashio thinks she is right and then gets an idea, looking at her intently. The man asks if she can keep a secret, explains that what she sees in the demonic realm must stay there, and that without secrecy they cannot agree, and the girl replies she understands. Mashio shows her the till. The demoness looks at him, puzzled. The girl is terrified. Surprised, she asks whether it is a demon. Till confirms the guess and asks if that is really a problem, and the hero repeats that what she sees in the demonic realm stays here, while asking whether that is true. The girl falls silent for a second, then stammers that he's right. Everyone returns to the cave. The man asks Jennifer to check for anything that can be traded and to pick up magic stones and wands. The girls start the task, and Makio realizes he never asked why she needed so many magical items. Still stammering, the stranger says bandits have risen to the west, and they need powerful weapons to suppress them. The hero asks again whether she mentioned the Civil War, then says it's a good time to earn money, and the girl is stunned, begins screaming and cannot understand how that is possible. The man realizes this does not sound like a merchant's reply. She gasps and stammers, admitting it is true. Jennifer approaches the hero and whispers, asking if she can distract him for a few words. She keeps whispering that the goods are too good, then suggests robbing a noble's carriage to get them, and Makio whispers, asking whether she is a thief. Addressing the girl loudly, the priestess replies that it may be true because she feels she has seen her before. The hero loudly assumes they are an adventurer who joined the bandits and then asks for forgiveness, saying he does not deal with criminals, which shocks the stranger. She insists she is not a thief. The heroes look on in bewilderment. Then the man asks where she got the product, and she fumbles for the right words. Stammering again, she admits she is a noblewoman from Eastern Canare, sent by her uncle, the Lord, to buy weapons. Jennifer now remembers where she saw her. Mashio gives her a puzzled look and says he didn't understand anything. The priestess explains that Eastern Canare is the nearest land to the Devil's Kingdom and is widely seen as its territory, and the hero falls silent and considers her words. Pointing at the adventurer, he asks again whether he heard correctly that a civil war broke out on her territory and a nobleman's daughter came here to buy weapons, then tells her she should run away. The noblewoman stammers again and loudly says that the people of Eastern Canare cannot flee. Jennifer supports her, saying Eastern Canare borders the elves' lands, so they have nowhere to run and the elves see them as barbarians. Makio understands this, although her uncle had let her go so she could run away. The girl answered quickly that no, she would not, because she is the best female warrior in Eastern Canare. Now the hero understands and says the important thing is that she did not steal them. Handing her the staffs, the man tells her to leave the forest and not to tell anyone about this place. Carrying her things, she leaves. The heroes then continue exploring the lake. The The man says he found the bones of a giant monster that day and nothing else. The next day, the girls drop in on the hero till, covering his ears against the ringing. He asks Makio if they will explore the lake again. Makio says not today because he decided to read. The history book he took from the adventurer said a country once stood on these lands, but its people suddenly began to disappear for unknown reasons. Huge monsters devoured the flying islands, a religion arose that treated deer as messengers of God, and natural disasters were constant here, so the hero suggests this cave might have been a refuge. He's now interested in eastern Kenir, where the girl is from, and the book says it's fertile but often plagued by uprisings and wars. Mashio concludes the adventurers likely started the Civil War, and in an illustration in the book, he sees heroes who have reclaimed their lands. The hero pauses, says aloud he doesn't like it, and suddenly senses an approaching storm. The heroes return to the village on the edge of their lands once more. The man tells Makio no and says that, as far as he can tell, no one is sending them anywhere. The hero says a noble warrior woman came to him yesterday and reported a rebellion in the neighboring territory. A warrior says he heard about it from adventurers, but those lands are too far away. He says the rebellion was most likely suppressed, so the hero need not worry. Makio then looks at him in silence. After they finish, the boy and girl run back. The hero says that for now the man is right, and the demoness thinks quietly before getting an idea and calling him by name. Heavy rain pours down on the demonic lands. Racing across wet, slippery rocks, the heroes head back to the cave, and Makio curses, saying the rain is very strong. Near the cave they spot a priestess dragging bags filled with something, and Jennifer calls the hero by name while carrying a heavy bag herself. The boy realizes she has already piled sandbags across the passage. She says the cave is safe for now, but if the rain doesn't stop their fields will suffer. Surprised, Makio says she is right, and that he needs to check how things are going. Then he runs off quickly as a huge stream of water floods the crops. Seeing the water rise, he realizes they will be flooded at this rate, and decides to redirect the flow of earth magic. Using this magic, he lifts the ground beneath his crops and jumps down from that height. The rain shows no sign of stopping. The boy returns to the cave. The priestess asks how things are. He says not much. The field was saved, but everything else is flooded, so he cannot expand the farm. The girls look surprised. Makio says they will have to trade goods for vegetables and wheat for a while. He says it kept raining all day and grew even heavier the next morning. After reconnaissance, Till reported that a hurricane had started, and unable to go outside now, the hero decides to build a homemade trap based on PJ's magic circle. Starting the plan, he narrates each action aloud, and first draws a magic circle on a piece of wood, leaving one line unfinished so it will not explode there. The hero pictures a large monster caught in an explosion, and suggests placing this piece of wood under fallen leaves so the monster's legs get torn off. A loud noise makes him jump. Makio turns and asks what the noise is. The girls run to the entrance and Jennifer calls him over. A massive black mountain rises behind the trees. A man asks in bewilderment where the mountain came from. The girls stare in shock. Jennifer calls his name and he begins to say this mountain, and the hero finishes by saying it moves. Lightning hits the ground, wind swirls around an unknown object, a hurricane uproots trees, and the lightning grows larger. Mashio says strong winds and lightning surround the mountain, and the monsters cannot cope so they flee even farther in fear. Remembering PJ's notebook, the hero asks in shock whether this is really the huge monster that appears every 3 months. He screams that he's a walking disaster and can't understand why no one noticed him before. A huge bear's body hurtles toward the heroes, and they barely have time to jump back in surprise. A man groans as other monsters' bodies crash down nearby. On the other side, Makio sees a crocodile and a snake on fire from a lightning strike. A man says the tornado lifts the monsters and then hits them with lightning. Scanning the cave, the hero notices part of it has collapsed, knows they could be buried alive if they stay, and watches the demons flee north. He calls to Till and Jennifer to get ready. They'll be heading north too. Wind picks up around the monster as he lifts his legs even higher. The hero asks Till to enchant her legs so they can run at top speed. Then he puts Jennifer on his back and tells her to tie herself with a rope. She asks for forgiveness. He calls everyone forward. The heroes hurry away from the approaching hurricane as the ground around them is torn apart and trees are uprooted. Monsters keep falling. The ground splits and the heroes leap onto the rocks. Makio thinks about how they will keep moving north. The rain keeps falling. At last, the man announces that they have reached the wasteland. Silent, he stares in shock at the picture in front of him until his breathing becomes heavy. The monsters keep smoking as lightning strikes them. Makio feels like the world is ending. The hero says the wasteland is no good and suggests returning to the forest. They are all breathing heavily. Makio thinks they just need to find shelter. Wood breaks beneath his feet, and he and the girl on his shoulders start to fall into the void. The hero, surprised, asks what happened. They then fall faster and scream in terror. They finally land. The man says he is in pain. Misio looks up and around and thinks it might be an old well or the ruins of people who lived here long ago. Then he tries to stand and winces in pain. The man looks at his ankle and thinks it's broken. Jennifer begins to untie herself and warns him about it. Mashio leans heavily against the wall and thinks at least they are sheltered from the rain and wind. From above, Till calls the hero by name. He says they are alive. The demoness smiles with joy. She goes down to collect branches for firewood. Putting them together, the girl says the sky no longer goes biddish, biddish, biddish. The fire flares up, and everyone sits around it. Behind him, the hero hears sounds and realizes he can even make out the monster's footsteps here. The priestess bows slightly and says she thought she was going to die, asking to be forgiven for holding them back, and the man says it's okay, his voice breaking as he adds that no one expected it to be her. Fates, the girls call out his name. Sunlight streams in and water drips. Makio is called and asked to wake up. He hears the full phrase only for the second time. Struggling to open his eyes, the hero hears Till call his name more angrily. Mashio asks how long he's been asleep, then looks surprised and asks if his leg is okay. The priestess says she cast a healing spell on it. At that moment she points into the darkness and calls everyone there. The hero jumps up and cries out in surprise, grabs the torch, and follows the demoness with the priestess. Scanning the area, he wonders if this is a well, or if underground water runs through here. In the cave they find glowing mushrooms. He and Till gasp and say how beautiful it is. Mashio looks around, wonders what kind of glowing mushroom it is, and warns them not to touch it. They find an underground lake. The hero struggles to see in the dark. Till calls his name, hands him something, and says this is that thing. Surprised, he understands what it is. Makio spots the same patterned stone and asks where the girl found it. The girl says the skeleton has it. Deep in the cave, a cloaked skeleton sits. A man asks whether this is another corpse. Till says it should be examined because it might have left something behind. The heroes find another book. Makio offers to examine it, and the priestess guesses it is a guide for beginning adventurers, though the book looks very old. They find a stone in the book and read the inscription beneath its picture, "Never lose the key to the dungeon." Mashio studies the object closely and asks again whether this really is the key to the dungeon. Till asks what kind of dungeon it is. The man says he's never been there. Jennifer says she was part of the capital group and they were heading to the deepest part. The hero keeps studying the guide. He points out a note left at the end. The note warns that if the monster takes over the dungeon, everything will be over. They all look at her as Mashio asks how anyone could steal a dungeon. The priestess thinks it over while Till stays silent. The demoness screams that it's impossible. The hero urges a quick escape, and he realizes he can no longer hear the giant monster's footsteps. Mashio manages to climb out of the well, lowers a rope for the girls to climb up, and a man says it's good the sky has cleared and the giant monster has disappeared. Fallen trees surround them. The hero calls it a mess, hopes the local terrain hasn't shifted much, and tells everyone to go home. Lifeless monster bodies lie between the trees. Till calls the man by name and says they want to eat. Jennifer awkwardly backs her up, and Makio thinks they really haven't eaten since yesterday. There is a problem. Not wanting to eat the corpses, he picks up some fruit and asks the girls to eat it, and Till and Jennifer agree as they return to their cave together. Mashio says a real pogrom is happening there. Telling the girls the room is full of stones and debris, he already feels tired at the sight. After checking the supplies, the demonist reports the wheat remained dry, and the priestess suggests they restore order so it can be lived in. Evening comes, the hero collapses from exhaustion and says he finally has a place to sleep. Tilt climbs into the bed beside him and immediately falls asleep. Jennifer asks for forgiveness because she is about to pass out too. Makio pulls a blanket around himself and thinks he should wash but cannot because he is about to fall asleep too. Slowly, his eyes close and his thoughts are interrupted. A sudden movement wakes him. He jumps up, surprised and unsure what happened. Something seems to be moving in his pocket. He pulls out a coin that keeps rattling. The hero realizes this is the coin Jennifer gave him, the one she supposedly took from the zombie, and says it is pulsing like a heartbeat. The coin keeps thumping and suddenly leaps from his hands. Mashio gasps. The coin keeps rolling along the ground as the hero runs after it, saying he can't lose it, reaching for it as it flies higher. The man tries to grab her several times and calls to her, groaning and cursing in anger. Chasing the coin, the hero calls out to ask if it rolled too far as it nears the water, and a surprised man shouts that a swamp lies ahead. Cursing, he reaches for it again. The coin slips from his fingers and falls into the water. Makio gives a silent cry. Searching the water, he asks whether she is mocking him. Then he finds a coin and sees someone emerge from the water. A translucent elf rises from the water. Makio opens her mouth in shock again. The elf stays silent, then speaks a single word. He turns, walks across the water, and disappears. The hero continues to scream silently. The next day, the man explains that a translucent elf ghost appeared, and the girls listen quietly. Till laughs, points at the hero, and asks again whether there really was a ghost and whether Makio was scared. Jennifer watches silently. The man yells at the demoness to stop laughing, and she keeps laughing, saying no one should be afraid of a translucent silhouette. The priestess asks whether he ever did anything bad to her. He replies that he doesn't think so. Jennifer says everything is fine and that she just needs to be sprinkled with holy water. The hero, surprised, asks whether she can actually make holy water. The girl replies that she is a priestess. She reads the spell and blesses the water. She turns transparent, and Jennifer asks whether her amount is enough, and Mashio replies happily that it is enough and thinks her prayers and gestures are exquisite, like those of a true priestess, although she is one. Laughing, he says he can now drop the coin into the holy water, then drops it as the girls watch. They spent the rest of the day fixing up the cave. Hauling, cleaning, and washing kept them busy. Mashio discovers that all the food supplies have been destroyed. The priestess calls to him. She shows him the room with the previous owner's belongings, and the hero is surprised that PJ's equipment is completely undamaged. Jennifer says it could be adamantite. The guy asks again. Jennifer explains adamantite is a very hard metal, valuable enough that even close friends can fight over a weapon made from it. Mashio notices PJ lives here alone and has no friends. Then someone calls him Till. Pointing to the toppled pentagram, she makes the hero gasp as the drawing begins to glow. Horror fills him as he stares at it, and he thinks the giant monster's attack left it damaged and nearly activated. Leading the girls out of the room, the hero says it is too dangerous to use for now, and they sigh heavily as darkness falls outside and something is happening tonight. The coin begins to jingle in the jar, and Makio shouts in surprise that it is moving again and that the holy water did not help them, as it keeps banging against the walls. The boy asks whether the elf spirit is calling her, and fearing it will happen every night, curses again. Makjo grabs the can and tells her to calm down right away. She keeps hitting the cork. A man approaches the swamp beside her and hesitates to go further. Realizing he's gone quite far, he worries he might get lost on the way home. Mashio steps on some leaves and hears a mooing coming from beneath them. The hero peers down in surprise at something odd beneath his feet, his gaze fixed on the foliage as he tries to make sense of it, caution and curiosity in his eyes. The protagonist steps back cautiously, unsure whether what he sees is an optical illusion. Listening to every rustle, he hesitates and tries to make sense of the strange anxiety. His mind is tense and ready for the unexpected. A moment later, the protagonist steps on the pile of leaves again to test his suspicions and his fears. His foot gets a clear response under the leaves, a rustling sound and a slight movement. He nods, confirming his suspicions. Convinced someone is hiding in the nearby foliage, Mashio drops to one knee to get a better look and move closer to the potential threat while slowly sweeping the leaves with his hand. At first he cannot speak. He stands frozen, staring at a point ahead, his face showing surprise, anxiety, and confusion as thoughts whirl through his head about what he is about to see. An elf with long ears lies unconscious in the foliage, dressed in light clothes with mysterious drawings on her hands and showing no sign of life, like a lost soul in the forest. Standing up, the hero instantly recognizes the elf from yesterday who had caught his attention, and his expression becomes serious and focused. Mashio isn't sure what to think. The elf looked like a ghost before and now seems alive but weak, so he suspects she might be a zombie or something similar. Barely alive, a girl struggles to call for help, stumbling as her strength fades, signaling she is alive and needs support while barely staying conscious, her voice trembling with fatigue. The hero studies the water bottle in his hand and notices the coin inside has stopped moving, a strange detail that feels important. The protagonist carefully lifts the girl so she can drink, bringing the bottle to her lips while checking her condition. The elf opens her mouth and drinks, holding the bottle with both hands and gulping so greedily that water runs down her face, showing her intense thirst. Already on her feet despite short hair hiding her eyes, she stays cautious, keeps to herself, and struggles to say thank you. The hero notices her tall stature and how she stands out from others, which deepens his interest. Curious, the protagonist wants to know where she comes from. Meanwhile, the elf hangs back, watches him warily, and does not reveal everything. Water runs down her skin, and she says she comes from the elven lands beyond the mountains in a quiet, confident voice. Mashio studies her closely, asks whether this country lies beyond the snowy mountains, and then asks her name. The girl calls herself Helgen Tulan, or just Heli, and answers slowly and haltingly as if the words are hard for her. Facing each other, Mukio introduces himself as the owner of these lands, sees that Heli looks very tired, and suggests she go there. Kneeling, she lowers her head a little, and begins to explain that she couldn't move because the ground seemed to swallow her. The girl says she sought help for her spiritual body, and was lucky to find the landowner, smiling despite her fatigue. The protagonist realizes he has encountered spiritual magic, not a ghost, and his doubts slowly fade. Mashio looks down at her and asks if she can stand, waiting for her to say yes and ready to help if needed. The protagonist gently lifts Heli, steadies her so she does not fall, places her hand on his shoulder, and they start walking together. Noticing a cut on her shoulder, the hero points it out. The girl looks at the wound, surprised as if she hadn't realized it. They examine the wounds on her shoulder closely. Deep cuts are clearly visible. The hero becomes seriously concerned. A strange mark with knife traces catches the protagonist's eye, and he stays silent for now, though it interests him. Makio is stunned by what he sees, his surprise clear because he did not expect to find such marks on the girl's shoulder. The hero studies Heli, suspects she may be a runaway slave, and asks her directly while watching her reaction. Heli insists she is not a slave, saying she ran away to escape state slavery, her voice steady and determined. She asks him in return whether she was a criminal, and the hero looks at her suspiciously while weighing the risk. She replies no, saying she was only trying to stop a senseless war, and her words sound sincere and heartfelt. Convinced this is treason, the hero regards her as a slave criminal and is slow to change his harsh opinion. Heli angrily insists she is not a traitor and says she was persecuted and forced to flee her country. Kneeling, the girl says she does not want to cause trouble and asks the protagonist to let her stay on his territory for a while. Stunned by the request, the protagonist cannot reply immediately, and his serious reaction reveals inner doubt. The hero wonders whether she can pay the rent to live there, and this question is important to him as he waits for an honest answer. A dark cave looms ahead with no light inside. The place feels mysterious and slightly unsettling. The two girls watch the exit with wary eyes. Silent, they observe what unfolds. Heli introduces herself and says she is glad to meet them. The girls view her as self-centered and respond ambiguously. Scratching his head, the protagonist sees a group of outcasts gathered and cannot understand why this place draws them, while the girls study Heli closely, judging her appearance and behavior. Sighing heavily, he was clearly irritated to have another neighbor who would only add more problems, and he felt slightly tired. A sudden thought hit him that he had no idea what this strange, eccentric elf would bring or how many problems and difficulties she would force him to deal with soon. An unusually shaped plate sat in front of him. Calmly, the hero looked at his plate and said that, though modest, the meal would still fill him a little and help him keep his strength during this difficult time, and it was clear he was trying to cheer up. The girl with the little horns said the wheat was already gone, so they could not make any more cakes. The hero took it seriously and began to consider the consequences. Makio realized things were going very badly. It seemed the giant magical monster that had appeared and wrecked their supplies had caused a flood that washed most of them away. The girls proposed going to the training camp to trade resources and supplies. Nearby, Heli watched the conversation closely to judge how much the idea would help them. After eating the flatbread, the protagonist thought about what to take because almost all the food and weapons were ruined, so to survive they had to gather everything needed for future campaigns. Using the remaining supplies, she decided to make a staff since it was the easiest option, packing skins from slain monsters and ingredients for potions. Mashio sat by the fire thinking over the plan and asked the girl if she knew anything about medicines and could help make healing potions, hoping it would ease their situation. After a moment's thought, she admitted she knew a little about pharmaceuticals but lacked deep knowledge and did not know how to create something that would sell profitably. Both heroes agreed to focus on potions, choosing to make elven healing potions that would be in demand and help them acquire the resources they needed. Staring at a nearby stone, the elf heard someone call her, pulling her out of her thoughts and forcing her to pay attention to what was happening around her again. Mashio proposed making the same healing potions Heli had made before, since they would be useful and help establish trade with the other villagers. A sly look crossed the elf's face as she laughed and closed her eyes, showing she liked the idea and was ready to work hard to do everything well and help the whole company. Heli accepted the proposal, saying it was easy for her and that she would make potions to pay for living here, a fair compromise for everyone. Without hesitation, she headed for the cave exit, pointing the way and planning to search for the needed ingredients, while her companions only asked her to be careful because the forest was full of dangers. Everyone froze as if stunned. The girls kept eating slowly, and the main character thought everything was unfolding exactly as he had expected and that many trials lay ahead. The protagonist stared down at the elf lying on the ground, making strange sounds as scorpions crawled over her body, and he said wearily that he always had problems with her. Healy froze, staring at the hero and the scorpion in his hand, unable to say a word. The hero held the scorpion calmly and asked whether they were both alive, hoping for some answer. Hearing the silence, the hero stopped pressing for an answer and asked Till if she would go with him to collect magic stones for a staff, and she agreed, raising the staff. Jennifer was assigned to gather edible plants and materials around the cave to increase the team's supplies and provide ingredients for food and potions essential to their survival. Helly sat in the cave, calmer now, and agreed to make potions from the gathered plants, a task that brought a sense of order and control. The hero has to get to work. Syl and the main character walked into the forest, carefully scanning their surroundings. The main character noted that after the giant magical monster appeared, the number of dangerous creatures had decreased in thought. Night fell and the forest was wrapped in darkness. They spread the stones, plants, animals, and threads collected during the day across the cave floor, and used them as the basis for making the items and potions they would need to survive. Jennifer beamed at the big catch, clapped her hands, and encouraged the whole team, giving them strength to keep fighting. The arachnid thread caught her eye, and after examining it, she said it would make excellent barter material that could bring them valuable resources and profitable deals, boosting the company's morale. Showing her medicinal potions, Hallie held out a vessel with a cloth lid bound with thread and asked that the herbs be kept for evaluation and later use. The protagonist told the elf that if she could not pay for her stay, he would have to evict her, but if she could stay as long as she wanted, and his words made her think about her responsibility. After that, the hero left for the training camp and told 2 girls to stay in the house and keep it safe so no one could break in. The girls wished him luck, said goodbye warmly, and hoped he would return soon, since each of them knew how important the task was. The protagonist made a mental shopping list and planned to ask for extra vegetables, fruit, and construction tools to improve his living conditions and prepare for the future. In the distance stood the camp where resources were exchanged. Its wooden houses, watchtowers, and a bridge made it look like a fortified settlement ready to repel outside threats. Carrying a backpack with goods for trade, Mashio felt the air grow strange and tense, as if something dangerous lurked around the corner. They looked toward the wooden spears jutting from the ground, a clear sign of protection or a warning that kept them on guard. Fights took place inside a ring of soldiers that looked like an arena. One fighter faced a man in light clothing and showed impressive speed and agility. The man dashed at a soldier, his left-hand dagger cutting the air far faster than the soldier's sword because it was lighter and more maneuverable. The adventurer watched the fight, trying to tell if it was a training session and who the fighters really were. It was hard to tell if the fighter was a child or an adult woman because the movements were so fast and precise. The captain approached them and greeted the hero warmly after learning he had returned to the camp, showing friendliness and readiness to cooperate. The company greets the captain and asks what caused the noise and commotion, since everyone needs to know the situation and why they are concerned. The captain in steel armor, arms crossed, said it was an exercise to calm people overwhelmed by fear and anxiety after recent events. He invited the protagonist to listen to the war news and asked for his views on the situation at the front. Talk of war made Mashio uneasy, so he refused to join the conversation and asked to trade goods since food had almost entirely disappeared after the disaster. By agreeing to the exchange with understanding, the captain began a mutually beneficial cooperation and gave them the chance to strengthen their positions. Inside the building, the hero examined the goods and was especially drawn to the arachnid thread offered in exchange for food and construction tools like a saw, hammer, and needles the team sorely lacked. With a serious expression, the man told the hero he had important information about the demonic realm that could be useful and interesting, hinting at events to come. The captain's words put the protagonist on edge, filling him with anxiety and mistrust as the conversation shifted into a more serious, weighty tone. The officer continued, asking whether the protagonist remembered that a civil war was underway in eastern Kenya. The adventurer recalled that a noblewoman warrior had come to the magic zone to retrieve a staff. The map showed the kingdom of Astinia, the warriors' lands in eastern Kenya, and the elves intervening in a civil war between nobles and adventurers. The protagonist asked for the reasons behind the elven invasion to understand their motives, their connection to the current conflict, and what had prompted the elven forces to intervene in these lands. He heard a likely motive for the invasion. The elves want to reclaim their ancestral lands even though times have changed, and old grievances and historical ties still fuel the conflict. The protagonist immediately thought of Haley, found in the foliage, who is trying to stop the war between elves and humans, and her goals were peaceful despite the escalating situation. The captain replied that the elves had been driven out of these lands when someone pointed out others already lived here. The past could not be changed, and the fight for control remained fierce. This was part of the conflict. When the adventurers beat the nobles in battles against the elves, the nobles lost their position and influence, shifting the territory's balance of power and changing how events unfolded. Mashio never imagined this could happen, but the captain believed the region was warlike and that the strongest would easily win the people's support. The hero concluded from the story that adventurers now control these lands, shaping events and playing a central role in the region's balance of power and fate. Briefly, the captain said they were under the control of a nobleman who had stirred up the adventurers and stood to gain from the conflict. A dark aura surrounded the nobleman's image, and he declared the demonic realm his, so the officer suspected the nobleman had learned of the staff's power and would stop at nothing to take it. Alarmed, the hero and the girl frowned at the news, which offered no comfort and worried them both. Slowly reaching into his bag, the hero pulled out a piece of paper, the only proof that the land rightfully belonged to him. The captain told the protagonist that the agency's document lacks a royal signature and therefore has no special legal force, so he could easily lose the case. Those words stunned the hero. Tears formed on his face, and he could not believe what was happening, utterly confused. The demon realm has long been a gray area between nations, a convenient yet controversial buffer, and even the captain wanted it controlled by adventurers. Mashio wanted to be sure the captain was on his side, but getting a clear yes was hard because the captain still had doubts. With his head bowed, he explained that the royal army could only intervene if the Eastern army acted against the royal family, and that the Eastern army belonged to the kingdom of Estynia. Sitting opposite, the protagonist realized the army had internal problems and conflicts that prevented it from acting in a coordinated way. Once again, the protagonist discovers someone is watching his land, so he stays on guard and prepares to defend his property. Mashio smiled and said that if anyone showed up on his territory without permission, he would simply drive them off without giving them a chance. The captain warned that such actions could make the situation worse and advised negotiating with the center to obtain official land titles for legal protection. The three walked out of the headquarters toward the exit, Mashio wearing his backpack again, while the officer walked beside them, carefully scanning the surroundings. The guards had already knocked down the girl who had earlier fought with the dagger, and she now lay powerless and unable to resist. Glancing over his left shoulder, the captain offered to take the girl with him to thank her for her cooperation and to make her fate easier. Exhausted with torn clothes and sweat on her forehead, the girl could not stay on her feet, so the guards carried her by the arms. Sent by the new ruler of the Eastern Empire, she would be at the protagonist's disposal if he took her under his wing. Leaning in, the captain quietly told the protagonist that keeping a woman in the camp was difficult because it could cause serious problems. Mashio even suggested she might be a former noble sent by the current ruler, which could cause trouble in his household, and the thought humiliated him. They told him she was now only a woman, no longer noble, and that if she did not leave the demonic realm, no one would know of her origin. The protagonist watched the girl closely as she lay powerless in the guard's arms. The girl looked down wearily and did not lift her eyes. Finding strength within, she slowly lifted her head to gather her thoughts and take in what was happening around her. At first, neither recognized the other, but it soon became clear she was the same girl who had come for the staff, now with a short haircut and able to recognize him through her connection to the demonic realm. Till stepped into the argument and said the main character's name, breaking the tense pause. Her words carried weight and immediately shifted the conversation, and everyone noticed. She said the demonic realm was in decline, and there was always work for every pair of hands, her tone calm and confident and sounding like a call to unity in action. The short-haired girl watched Till closely, trying to figure out why Till was hiding her true nature, her expression mixing curiosity and caution. Before she could speak, the hero grabbed her by the back of the head, immediately taking control and showing determination and strength, highlighting the tension between them. Quickly, Till put her on his back, said they were taking her, and already had the backpack with supplies slung over his shoulders. They ran on, trying not to be noticed or followed, and in the distance the captain said goodbye. The cave was already in view, and when they returned from their journey, Jennifer and Haley met them with worried but joyful faces. The elf pointed and asked who the girl was, still on the protagonist's back and clearly exhausted and weak. Still exhausted, the girl slumped against Makio, who said calmly that she was now under his protection and that he had taken her in. Lifting her head slightly from Makio's shoulders, she tried to focus and find her bearings. Eyes fixed on a single point, she tried to gather her thoughts and figure out what would happen next. She looked at Till, but the elf could not understand what was happening and watched with surprise. The girl kept looking at her and, without warning, called her name, which triggered a sharp reaction. Fight started right away. The girl knocked the elf down, and Healy used one hand to pull the girl's hand off the elf's throat while blocking a blow with the other. Healy wanted to understand what was happening, but the protagonist did not like the situation. Stepping in, he pushed them apart, covered their faces with his palms to stop the fight, and said firmly that servants must not fight. Both girls looked unhappy at these words. They lowered their fists in confusion as they tried to understand their actions. Speaking as one, they shouted that they were still no one's servants, and the voices were so loud the main character covered his ears with his hands to block the sound. The captain's words put the protagonist on edge, filling him with anxiety and mistrust as he realized the conversation had turned serious and taken on a grave tone. I will expand the text to convey the atmosphere while preserving the narrative's clarity and logic. The adventurer reminded all residents of the house that anyone who causes trouble or refuses to pay for accommodation will be thrown out immediately, and until then everyone must live together peacefully and maintain order and discipline. Meanwhile, the girls kept clashing and arguing, while Makio and Till, despite the tension, began building a new house for everyone. Early the next morning, the main character woke up, greeted everyone in the house first, and watched his surroundings with keen interest to figure out how to improve relations within the team now. He saw Sylvia and Healy standing in line, sternly scolding Jennifer as she cooked over a fire. Both girls said in unison that hotter meant better. Jennifer looked at them in despair, unsure how to please. The main character stood in a mild daze, surprised at how quickly the two, who were both friends and rivals, ended up united in their views. All the heroes gathered in the forest. It was time to hunt for food and gather essential supplies. Makio put on his backpack, checked his gear, and was ready to set out. The girls raised their hands to show they agree and are ready to begin the journey together. After a while, they encountered a troll. Till and Makio stepped back to watch while Sylvia, wielding a hammer, fought the huge monster alone. Their battle sent chunks of earth flying. The protagonist noticed that Sylvia was a skilled fighter, displaying strength and agility in battle. Suddenly, he turned around, as if expecting to see something else. The giant turtle suddenly lifted Helgen off the ground, shocking her, and although her cloak held her so she did not feel the movement, she cried out for help in panic, fearing she would be eaten. She failed to notice the turtle's size, tens of times larger than her, while Till and Makio clearly saw the danger. From the ground, the protagonist and Till watched the scene. Makio loudly called the girl's name to prompt Till into action. Till lunged at the turtle and cast a spell that could not be expressed in human language, and the animal froze as if petrified. The protagonist hurried after her, grabbed the sword, and with a single powerful blow severed the turtle's head. Heli flew down as blood spurted from the severed head like a fountain. Blood drenched Sylvia, leaving no clean spot on her body. When the head hit the ground, Healy fell in pain. Sylvia stood frozen, covered in blood and in shock. The hero immediately apologized to her. He asked Till to take the woman to the river, help her wash and find new clothes, and Till agreed without hesitation. Hala pointed to her blood-stained clothes and said she needed help cleaning them. The hero replied with kind, encouraging words. With the girls away, Makio decided to make turtle soup. A cauldron simmered on the fire and the fragrant broth filled the air. As he tasted a spoonful, someone called him. A horned girl silently showed him what had happened. She hurried over to show the dead horse lying nearby on its side, the saddle still on, its belly cut open, and everything around soaked in blood. Stepping closer, the adventurer confirmed it was a horse's corpse. The saddle indicated it had been ridden, and Jennifer said 2 more corpses were visible nearby. Finding a bag with a sword and bloodstains, Makio concluded invaders had attacked. He reached into his bag, pulled out the letter, and after reading it sank into a stupor. A massive wasp nest hung above them, many times larger than they were. The hero discovered it was a wasp nest. When Makio saw the dead horse and the swarm of wasps, he concluded the riders were probably torn apart. He asked what to do now. Since no more help was possible, someone suggested they just leave and eat. Taken aback, the elf did not expect this proposal. Mashio studied the girl's body and noticed it was covered in tattoos, focusing on her shoulders and legs. She admitted these are not tattoos, but seals that hold a powerful curse, making it nearly impossible for her to use magic. Looking down, she admitted sadly that this upset her because magic was no longer available. Other girls who had heard the elf's words came over and showed interest, and Jennifer felt scared when they came too close. They assured her that as long as the curse did not interfere with her life, it would not be a problem. Mashio, the landowner, was pleased that she made potions to sell. Everyone said no. One feared her curse since one was of the demon race and the other barely used magic. Sylvia said she could use magic to numb pain or briefly boost her physical abilities, and the hero watched with a smile. Thinking they were carefree, cheerful girls, he crumpled the letter into a ball. A letter fell to the ground, and words on its corner said they were evicted from the territory. Heli quietly woke Mashio by gently touching his shoulder so she would not wake the others. Knowing it was time to act and that an important moment should not slip away, her eyes shone with excitement. Woken early, he opened one eye and tried to make sense of what was happening and why he had been roused. Sleep still clung to him as consciousness slowly returned and the air felt tense. Startled by the elf's sudden appearance, the character jumped up. The girls sat down beside him right away to calm and support him. Anxiety and anticipation hung in the air. She said Till had taught her about palm juice, usable for potion vessels, and she was surprised no one had told her about it before. Machio, rubbing his tired eyes, said that in this heat it is better to use clay vessels because clay stays cool and keeps water fresh longer. Nodding, the elf slipped away quietly and said she understood the advice and would try other ways to make vessels, her face showing determination and a readiness to experiment, and she was full of enthusiasm and a desire to help. Mashio stopped her at the threshold, surprised she had woken him so early to ask that question and not realizing it mattered to her, his eyes showing confusion and slight irritation. The elf immediately remembered there was more, and with Till they saw something strange near the western stream that alarmed the hero, who warned it looked dangerous and needed the whole team's attention. She said they had seen a living dead man moving among the trees. It was frightening and unexplained. The girls realized it might be a sign of trouble. Machio led the girls into the forest to check the information, and they soon met Till, who pointed toward the thicket, her face showing worry as she waited for their response. A disfigured body, missing some human features, crawled slowly across the ground, making muffled noises but no clear speech, creating an eerie and alarming scene. It moved away from the heroes and revealed grim details. Half of its torso was missing, which made the scene even more horrifying. The hero decided that, although the dead man was not harming anyone, it was safer to burn him because leaving the body could spread the infection, and safety was more important. Jennifer leaned closer to the body and noticed something strange about its appearance. Narrowing her eyes, she tried to figure out what made the creature stand out. Memories and anxiety rose inside her. Crawling slowly, the body made Jennifer remember she had defeated this dead man before, the only person she had ever beaten in these lands, and that memory gave her confidence and determination. At first, the protagonist didn't remember him until Jennifer reminded him she had once given him a gold coin in advance. Machio's jaw dropped as the memory came back unexpectedly. Nobody wanted the zombie virus to spread, so the hero asked Till to burn the body to prevent an epidemic, and they decided quickly without hesitation. When the elf asked what kind of coin the dead man held, the hero could not identify the gold coin found with Heli's body, which made the mystery deeper and needed an explanation. Furious, the elf yelled at him that he should have warned everyone about this. She was upset by the lack of information and worried about the consequences, speaking in a stern, demanding voice. It was thought to be an elf adventurer, but the body's severe changes during the transformation made identification impossible, and the elven ears were hard to see among the wounds. Perhaps a comrade had come to these parts in search of a mysterious city. His fate was unknown, which worried the team, and everyone considered possible scenarios. They pulled out a jar of liquid with a coin inside, and the girl gently eased the coin out, examined it closely, and focused on understanding its origin. Inspecting the coin closely, she realized it was unusual and unlikely to be counterfeit, and they assumed this was the zombie that had reached Midgard, a discovery that could change many things. Midgard proved to be the name of a city at the heart of legends and myths, and that information strengthened their investigation, making the city the key to the solution. In the magical kingdom, Yggdrasil Midgard was a city where everyone, from children to the elderly, could use magic. Powerful artifacts made it more advanced than many other nations of its time. The kingdom traded with the elven country, maintaining cultural and economic ties, and the team wanted to know when the city's records disappeared to deepen their understanding of history. Sylvia said she had also read about it in a history book. A state once existed in these parts. Her comment confirmed the importance of the facts they had found. That gave them more confidence in their mission. Healy grabbed Sylvia by the shoulders and demanded to know where the book was, his voice edged with impatience and hope, since the book could shed light on many mysteries. The protagonist said he bought the book from a girl with short hair and asked everyone to wait. Recognizing the source's value, he planned to study it with the team, and it was a step forward in their search. He pulled out a book that said a country once stood in these parts. Its inhabitants suddenly vanished en masse. The island was swallowed by a giant monster, and a different religion took hold. The protagonist read the book's main content. Then the elf took the book and found on the last page the diary's initials and a description of the runes. The hero said he found a diary on the man he was holding, and the man's lifeless body had been in a cave so long that only bones remained. The hero, accompanied by the horned girl, found the island where Peter Jefferson's grave lay. Till was eating then and kept out of the conversation. The other girls listened closely, trying to make sense of the connection. The elf grew confused. If Peter Jefferson was buried on the island, someone else must be holding the diary, and watching the conversation deepened her doubts and anxiety. At first the hero agreed, but a closer look revealed inscriptions on the diary and beside the magic circle that needed study, giving him a new perspective on the mystery. He studied the diary's last page and the notes beside the magic circle, which looked important and different from each other, each holding key information. Helly realized the diary had been written by two different people, which explained the discrepancies and deepened the mystery, confirming the story's complexity. It no longer surprised the protagonist, so he sat down to eat and noted that shared authorship was likely, but even together they could not solve the mystery of these lands, and the riddle remained unsolved. Counting the body found in the forest, there are 3. This raised more questions and deepened the mystery, with 3 unknown people tied to the land's secret. After collecting the information, Helly concluded that a kingdom called Yggdrasil once stood here. In the elven lands, the deer was the messenger of the gods, and those legends were part of their culture. Until the land of demons, people call the deer the devil's messenger, she said without chewing her food, and that contrast emphasized the world's discord and made understanding more difficult. The protagonist realized Yggdrasil was at odds with the demon kingdom beyond the sea, a feud that explained many historical mysteries and conflicts, and he considered it gravely. Helly faced 2 pressing questions, where Midgard was and why Yggdrasil had fallen, and she was determined to find the answers. Driven by those questions, Helly told Muccio she would not leave until she uncovered the land's secret, and her resolve inspired the others, so the team found new purpose in their journey. Jennifer and Sylvia also supported these goals. One of them said the book had been handed down through generations. Maybe it was their fate to solve the mystery. This united their efforts. Unprepared for such changes, the protagonist warned that any ruins found would be on his land, and that he would expel anyone who tried to seize the treasures, standing firm in his position. The mystery of these lands remained unsolved after those words, and life went on as usual. No one revealed the secrets, but everyone knew the time would come. Everyday life and the mystery coexisted. Helly and Till built a stove from bricks of different colors and materials that resembled a guard's helmet. The work was painstaking, and together they created a sturdy structure. It became a symbol of their work. Jennifer swept and wove baskets. These small tasks helped keep the camp tidy and cozy. Every detail mattered in daily life. Holding a large bone, Sylvia considered new ideas and possibilities, focused on the future in a moment of reflection and planning. Sylvia suggested Mashio try, making armor and weapons from monster materials, a new direction she wanted to explore and develop. Although she had never done this before, she was determined to try, and her enthusiasm showed she was willing to learn and take risks. Mashio agreed, saying there were plenty of materials and he would let her try. If she succeeded, she could pay for her apartment with it. They had a mutual agreement to support each other. After a while, Sylvia showed everyone her new armor, including bracers and knee pads, standing proud and confident as the protagonist praised her success. After that, Sylvia became the land's weaponsmith and earned experience and respect. That shifted her role in the group. She was proud of her achievement. She asked the adventurer to teach her to fight. This became her new ambition. Her aim was to become stronger and more confident. He said he wasn't strong enough to teach anyone, but could set up training in wilderness survival skills, which was a reasonable and useful alternative, and he offered support. She agreed and kept asking him to teach her. They entered the forest, ready for new challenges. A new chapter of their journey began. Deep in the forest, they met a large, angry bear ready to attack. The The encounter was tense and dangerous. They needed to act quickly. Sylvia attacked and dodged, trying to find a way to land a decisive blow, but all her hammer strikes failed and the bear did not react at all, making the fight very difficult. Watching from the sidelines, the protagonist saw potential in the girl and told her to look for weak spots in the enemy's defense, saying his experience could help her improve. The protagonist explained that when normal attacks fail, battle tactics must change, noting that Sylvia has not practiced those tactics yet, but she still managed to win without showing any weakness. Sylvia followed the advice and asked where the hero learned to fight, wanting to know his path and approach to combat because it mattered for her training. Like any adventurer, he said he went through basic training and joined a guild, then trained on his own to build a broad set of skills. Those words showed the hero could fight well, and his confidence inspired Sylvia, strengthening her desire to learn. The hero said he was just watching the enemy, and with experience he could predict their next moves. His strategy was based on focused attention and careful analysis. Using bones as an example, he showed how knowing which way they bend lets you get out of range. Even when cutting up an opponent, you can learn a lot about them. It was concrete and practical advice. As he left, the hero repeated that watching an opponent helps someone find their own way to fight, urged a personal approach, and left Sylvia with a lesson. At first, she repeated the rule in her head without fully understanding it, since her training had just begun, and time and practice would help her get the hang of it. The adventurer gave this example. Placing an unknown fruit on your hand shows whether it is poisonous. It was a way to test for danger. Small details matter for survival. Jennifer ate the fruit, and her mouth caught fire, a clear consequence of a thoughtless act that taught her a hard lesson. The hero warned her not to eat everything to avoid such situations, and guided and cared for the team because their life required caution. Life in the wilds was a steady routine of trials and lessons, with each day bringing new challenges as they grew stronger and learned together. During lunch in the cave, an unexpected incident confused everyone and made the atmosphere tense, so everyone grew wary. A cry rose from the western river, and Healy located its source. It was an ominous warning. The team began to prepare. The protagonist took Till to scout the situation and told the other girls to stay in the cave. They divided the tasks. Time was short. They ran to the river, prepared for the unexpected. Fast, determined steps carried them forward. Everything might change. At the riverbank, they spotted two figures in black robes with their faces covered. One had an unreadable mark on their hand, a sign of mystery and danger. This marked the start of a new story. Mashio scanned the area, taking in every detail. Motionless people in the distance suddenly caught his eye, and he pointed them out, their rigid, unnatural poses alarming him. Till crouched to get a closer look at the bodies, checked their condition, found no breathing, and in a heavy voice reported that they were all dead with no signs of life. She studied one body for a long time, taking in every detail and reaching out as if trying to determine the cause of death, while questions about what could have happened kept running through her mind. A strange mark on one of the dead men caught Till's eye. Mikio looked closer and noticed they all had the same tattoo. The tattoos linked them and showed a common connection. Thoughtfully, the girl said the wildlands were likely the target of the attack, then stood and stared into the distance, trying to grasp the scale of the disaster. The hero suggested the cause might be an enemy invasion. Till agreed and said it was time to search for survivors. They knew there was still a small chance. They soon discovered several more bodies, which deeply upset them. It gave them no hope of rescue and only confirmed how grave the tragedy was. Mashio spun around and warned they couldn't leave the bodies, so Till urged taking them to the captain for his support because they couldn't handle it alone. First, they asked Jennifer whether anyone in the group knew what had happened, hoping to understand the situation, gather more information, and get help from outside. The girls stood stunned and could not recover from the horror they had seen, while Jennifer noticed a familiar tattoo on one of the dead men that might reveal where the criminals came from. Touching her chin, she said the mark belonged to the church organization's killers, filling everyone with fear and distrust and making it clear who was behind the actions. The characters asked with questioning looks at Cassie, seeing expression 16 on her face. They did not understand what was hidden behind this name. They tried to understand the meaning of this threat. As they discussed the mysterious people, Makio dug deeper, trying to discover who was really behind the crimes as his mind filled with guesses and everything felt unclear. Looking into Mikio's eyes, she told him the whole truth in detail, emphasized how serious the situation was, and made him think deeply. Makio felt everything was too complicated and hard to understand, with unanswered questions crowding his mind. The character asked Makio why the killers had to come here and what their goals and motives were. That question was the key to figuring out what was happening. Mashio turned to her, his eyes twitching with worry and shock. He realized the situation was deeper than it first appeared, and his fear and anxiety grew. Scanning his companions, he realized too many suspicious people were involved, making the task more difficult and dangerous, and much of it was unknown and threatening. He decided to leave the matter to the army because they could not cope with such a threat alone, and it was a deliberate, careful choice. The hero laid out his plan, saying he would go to the captain at the military camp and asking the girls to stay safely in the forest so they could get help and support. The captain heard the story and froze, then began thinking out loud as he tried to process the information, his reaction showing how serious the situation was. Machio described in detail everything they had seen and learned. The conversation remained tense and serious. They explored possible solutions. The captain stated his opinion, but the young man disagreed and argued, defending his view and offering alternatives, which led to a lively discussion between them. They stared at each other, each trying to prove they were right. The discussion focused on next steps and strategy, which depended heavily on their decisions. The man asked the soldier if there was more time before the important conversation. That question increased the tension between them. They had little time to decide. Machia froze and stared at the commander, not blinking and tense, feeling pressure and anxiety as this moment proved critical for him. The commander said the discussion would focus on who owned the wild lands. That issue went beyond the usual military matters. The question of who owned the land was important. The hero stared in disbelief, convinced it must be a mistake or a misunderstanding, and the news was so unexpected it felt unreal. The character said they would get the papers in 3 days to formally secure the young man's rights to the wild lands. Machio was overjoyed and thanked the commander sincerely. It was a great support and an important step forward for him, and his joy was genuine. Smiling, he said he would soon become a nobleman. The news meant a great deal to the young man. His status would soon change. He stared at him in disbelief and surprise, unable to accept the change because everything seemed too good to be true. The knight crossed his arms and solemnly agreed, but said the conversation must stay secret for now. That required caution. Machio kept looking at the commander, bewildered, trying to take in what he'd heard and grasp the consequences, while everything felt too complicated and unexpected. The commander said the noble's personal army would be ready to return to the wild lands in 3 days, so large forces would soon intervene, and the situation could change dramatically. The young man suddenly broke into a cold sweat and asked why this was happening. It seemed unbelievable and frightening. The character said firmly that the territory is not yet officially registered, so the army cannot interfere, even during an invasion. Machio saw it was the right moment to invade, and that realization terrified him as the danger loomed close. The commander stood firm in his plans. He was ready to take decisive action. Their mission was to defend the lands at all costs. Unhappy with the sudden news, the young man said such matters should not be announced so abruptly and should be handled more cautiously. Waving his hand, the hero said he was counting on the boy and trusted him firmly, expecting a great deal from the young man. Machio kept watching closely and asked how many people would be in the army, because the number mattered for resources and capabilities. After a moment he said there were about 2,000 people, and the character was stunned by how big that number was. The captain said the forces were outnumbered because they had only 5. They were vastly outnumbered by the army. This made the fight more difficult. With his hands crossed under his chin, he said that without action a serious war would start. The time demanded decisive steps. There was no retreat. Machio pressed his lips together and fell deep into thought, realizing he did not care about becoming a noble and that his priority was preserving the wild lands. Imagining the vast wild lands he wanted to own and protect became his true desire and motivation, and everything else faded into the background. Shouting decisively, he said he understood everything and promised to do whatever it takes to complete the task, showing firm, unwavering determination. Machio calmly reported that the Eastern genius would attack them, speaking with confidence and showing no fear while making clear the threat was serious. Listening closely, the girls realized the enemies would use traps in battle, and because they were few, rely on clever hidden ambushes. One girl said she understood the situation and felt encouraged inside, seeing the challenges as a chance to prove herself and prepare for a serious battle. Breathing heavily, the girl admitted this was her one chance to take revenge on her enemies in battle and to prove her strength and sense of justice in the upcoming fight. The rest of the team looked puzzled and unsure. They understood how serious it was but didn't know the best way to proceed. They immediately began digging holes and setting traps to prepare a defense. Each picked up a tool and worked with full dedication, knowing their safety depended on it. Shovels slammed into the hard earth as the boys carefully dug deep holes. They moved in coordinated, energetic bursts and worked without a break to dig enough traps. The elf noticed they were returning to primitive methods, digging holes like in ancient times, and wondered how those old ways could still be useful today. Noticing her thoughtfulness, Mashio asked whether she had any other ideas to help with the defense, and she hoped for something new and unconventional that could strengthen their position. She weighed her options for a while, concentrating on an original defense that could change the course of the battle while her mind worked hard. Till suggested they use original magic, speaking with high spirits and confidence. Believing it would be their secret weapon against the enemy, her suggestion inspired everyone and gave them strength. Everyone considered it. It became clear they could not wield such magic. That realization brought some disappointment but did not break their spirit. It was clear they needed to seek help and support. Magic seemed distant and difficult. Raising her hands, Till asked Mashio to begin his spell, hoping he could show his skill and help with the defense. Her voice carried hope and expectation. Machiasai tensed his arms and focused, agreeing to show his magical skills, aware of the moment's importance, and ready to give it his all with a determined gaze. A massive boulder rose from the ground, shocking everyone with its size. The team stood in stunned disbelief. The impressive display of magic lifted the defenders' spirits. The girl said she had never seen anything like it before, her voice mixing shock and admiration as the display of power felt incredible. The girls said they had never seen anything like this and assumed it was earth magic, linking it to natural forces and increasing their confidence in their own resources. Makyo said the magic was easy to use, explained how it worked, reassured the team, and eased their fears with a calm, confident tone. One girl objected, saying he was wrong and clearly knew less than she did. Confident in her knowledge, she wanted the others to know. Her words caused a slight tension in the group. Everyone watched the magic display intently, and Mashio grew nervous as pressure and anticipation built, making it hard to stay calm, but he knew he had to hold on and his palms started to sweat. The elf asked whether he had made the magic entirely on his own, admitting she had not expected him to be so capable. Her surprise turned to admiration. That gave Mashio more confidence. Till explained that magic can check whether a spell is usable and described in detail how the process works, deepening everyone's understanding of magic. Magic reacted to her words with clear displeasure and surprise, as if it rejected her explanations. It became a silent exchange of power and knowledge that revealed the complexity of the magical world. She said she usually teaches magicians spells and formulas, and the young man only needs to decide if that knowledge can be applied. That was the traditional view of teaching magic. Magic admitted he couldn't do it, and that others had told him he had no talent, reinforcing the inner doubts and obstacles Makyo faced. Till, however, said he could make magic from his imagination, doing it with faith and admiration, and she saw it as a unique gift that went beyond the usual rules. The girls teased him, pointing and calling him weird in a friendly way, and Makio took it in stride, knowing his weirdness was a strength. Although the elf admitted he was an oddball, he said it did not matter to their cause. What mattered was his help and willingness to fight alongside them. She asked him to build a complex enchanted labyrinth to confuse enemies. The idea could greatly strengthen their defenses. The hero considered the proposal, weighing its labor needs and likely effectiveness, and pictured how to bring the idea to life. She backed the plan, saying it would help protect the cave, and the group felt optimistic and confident. They routed the path to the cave through numerous hills and obstacles to slow the enemy and gain a tactical advantage. She said holding the high ground would let them control the battlefield more effectively and spot advancing enemies early, which was an important part of their strategy. Pleased with her answer, Makia confirmed it was a good plan, and his approval boosted the others' determination. The team decided to avoid close combat to save energy and improve their chances of survival. The decision was practical and carefully considered. One girl asked if they could use monsters in battle to boost their strength, showing the team was exploring every way to protect themselves. Makyo pointed and said monsters could be organized quickly and efficiently, giving hope they could strengthen the defense. Thiel said magic circles could provide extra reinforcement and protection, creating new possibilities and strategies. The book listed several magic circles they could try, which made her curious and excited. Machio considered the idea and admitted it was effective and could help them in battle. His support raised the team's confidence in success. An ally said that a key task is to destroy the enemy's supply lines to weaken their forces and secure a long-term strategic advantage. Machio suggested poisoning the opponent's food, saying it would significantly weaken the enemy without direct confrontation. It was a clever solution. The elf considered it and agreed that poisoning was an effective and reasonable tactic, adding another element to the team's plan. She said palm sap could be shaped into pots that would melt easily in a fire, turning them into useful weapons and adding tactical flexibility. Mashio chuckled ominously, saying they had plenty to prepare for now, his laugh steady and a little playful. Believing they could succeed if they did their best, he felt confident and hopeful. He gave a clear, decisive cry ordering everyone to prepare for battle, signaling the start of active operations, and they all knew how much depended on them now. The hero stared into the distance, his eyes scanning the horizon as if trying to see past what was visible, his face showing deep concentration. Nearby, the girls peered into the distance with sharp, wary eyes, sensing that the largest operation in the wilds in many years was about to begin. The team prepared methodically to face the enemy, fortifying positions, checking weapons, and assigning tasks amid an atmosphere of intense focus and shared effort. Seeing the mood, Mashio smiled and said it was time to eat and gain strength before the battle, and his calm, friendly manner eased the tension a little. Everyone sat by the campfire, preparing for the night when the elf's sharp ears picked up an unusual, quiet but persistent rustling. Far off, dull drums beat in a steady, growing rhythm, a battle signal that lifted the advancing troops' morale and filled the air with the enemy's energy and resolve. Realizing the enemy was near, the characters lifted their spirits before the battle. Their hearts raced, and their minds filled with a sharp sense of danger. Jennifer doubted the enemy could assemble 2,000 troops on the narrow isthmus they planned to cross and questioned their ability to organize. Mashio said retreating was the wiser choice in that situation to avoid unnecessary losses and to preserve forces for a more opportune moment. The whole team sat on the hill watching the enemy and assessing the situation. Their eyes were tense and alert, ready for any turn of events as if time had stopped. An hour passed and they were still on the hill, tired but not weakened. Evening approached, shadows lengthened, and their bodies needed rest. Despite the fatigue, no one relaxed. Makyo asked irritably whether the enemy would attack or if this was just a drawn-out wait. His voice showed impatience and tension, a need to know when the decisive battle would begin. Hearing faint, distant screams and the sound of fighting, the elf assumed the battle had already begun and the enemies were fighting before they could act. The characters launched into a lively discussion about what they had heard and how it would shape their actions, trading opinions. Mashio sat deep in thought, focused on the situation and how it would unfold, his face serious as he weighed risks and options, while the girls decided to bake bread. Ultimately, nothing serious happened that day, and the team returned to the cave to rest. Even without fighting, the tension remained. Everyone knew this was only a brief respite before the coming storm. Mashio ate his bread while thinking about the invasion of eastern Kenya, trying to understand how it had come together and what lessons could be learned, his mind absorbed in analyzing the past. She replied that several people in the castle were traitors, which made the defense much harder and led to defeat, and her words filled their plans with darkness and mistrust, creating a danger from within. Alarmed, the elf suspected traitors among them and feared this would harm the cause, so she spoke up and everyone turned to her to judge how likely it was. She said it was unlikely to happen, staying calm and avoiding spreading panic, and the team worked to maintain unity and trust so fear would not destroy their cohesion. Mashio announced he would become a noble after this battle, surprising everyone there. His confident tone was unexpected and left many thinking. It marked a new milestone in their shared journey. The girls warned him not to jump to conclusions and spoke cautiously, expressing concern for safety and understanding the battle was still to come. Remembering Healy's nobility gave Mashio confidence and inspiration. It strengthened his resolve to move forward and achieve his goals. A new fire burned in his soul. Seeking guidance, he asked if anyone among them was already a noble and could share their experience. Makio hoped to rely on their knowledge and feel supported. The question helped build new connections within the team. To everyone's surprise, Till the elf and the short-haired girl raised their hands to reveal they were nobles. That admission changed the team's dynamic and made their words carry more weight. Mashio was stunned and could hardly believe it when he learned the three girls were actually noblewomen, which raised the team's status and opened new opportunities. Jennifer gripped the bread tightly as a bead of sweat slid down her cheek. Tense and excited, she seemed calm on the outside but felt anxious and responsible inside. Mashio asked what the noblewomen did. The girls said nobles governed lands, raised children, and fought in battles to maintain order and power. Their stories revealed new facets of the nobility. Closing his eyes, the young man asked what nobles did in practice, trying to understand their real role. The girls explained in detail, laying out the core duties and daily routines. He admitted he'd handle it himself because he was tired of long conversations, wanted to focus on business, and needed to rest and prepare for the upcoming trials. The team took turns keeping watch at night, so someone was always on guard, helping them stay alert and safe in the dark. The next morning, Makio opened his eyes to find his colleague standing beside him, already aware of something alarming and urging him to act quickly against a new danger. Together, they rushed to the scene. Finding a dead boar caught in a trap was a warning that the enemies were already nearby and had begun taking action. The young man explained it was only a wild boar accidentally caught in a tripwire and trying not to panic, and he tried to calm the team even as he felt the danger approaching. Glancing to his right, he saw a girl arrive asking when she had managed to get to their camp, and her arrival increased his anxiety and made him more alert. Looking into the distance, the girl said the enemies were already approaching and moving quickly toward them. The news alarmed everyone, and the team began preparing their defenses. Makio tensed and pointed at the stream where the large enemy army hid. Her gaze sharpened and grew determined as she realized time was short. A large enemy army moved through the trees, organized and ready for battle, and their numbers and coordination were alarming, forcing immediate action. A masked man stood among them, staring into the distance, the enemy leader and a clear symbol of their power and danger, and his presence spread fear and made the attack feel more serious. A group of men chopped down trees with axes, hacking through the dense forest, their movements determined and purposeful, clearly focused on the task at hand. Makjo noticed their activity and asked what they were planning because he wanted to know how big the threat was and what tactics the enemy used, and his voice was calm with a hint of caution. The girl said the enemies planned to build a bridge to cross the obstacles and reach them directly. That explained the tree cutting and alarmed the whole team. The girls reminded Mashio that fighting on an empty stomach was difficult and that he needed to eat, expressing concern and stressing the practical need to preserve his strength. The girl said she had brought smoked meat and nuts so everyone could eat and regain strength. It was a small but meaningful sign of support and unity in a hard moment. The team appreciated the gesture. Mouth still full, Till asked Makio what they would do next, eyes bright with curiosity and resolve and ready to act. The character said they'd wait. Makio said they would use the monsters in battle, relying on their fearsome power to help in the fight. His gaze was steady, and he trusted this unusual weapon would work. The girls turned to him, asking whether they would really use monsters at such a crucial moment, their doubts showing fear of unpredictable consequences. The team used scent to draw the monsters into the right spot to strengthen their position. The enemy commander ordered the troops forward, and a fierce battle began. The army advanced quickly. An unexpected danger struck when a sticky, salty substance began to engulf them, freezing their movements and quickly filling them with panic. Wild animals noticed them immediately. They rushed in with a furious attack. The knights shouted in surprise and tried to fight back, but the commotion and chaos only made things worse. From above, winged monsters attacked, adding another level of danger. Still, the knights had strict orders to hold their ground and fight to their last breath. The decisive battle had arrived. They fought with desperate determination. Constant attacks by beetles and living plants kept adding obstacles and dangers, and every minute tested their endurance and courage. Their leader vowed to burn them all with magic, promising fire and destruction. The threat caused fear and pushed the defenders to find new ways to resist. When the boys realized their commander was a true mage, they had to rethink their tactics and stick together. They understood the forces of fire were strong, but there were ways to resist them. They chose to shoot the commander to interrupt his spell. The elf quickly readied her bow and aimed steadily. Each shot could carry the hope of salvation. Steadying her aim, she released the arrow. Just as the mage was deep in the spell, it happened, and it was risky but necessary. The arrow struck the mage, stopping his spell and stunning his enemies. The hit changed the course of the battle. His subordinates saw the wound and grew concerned as they realized their leader was in danger. Confusion spread through the enemy ranks. Mashio praised the elf as a good girl, but she was unhappy with herself, believing she should have killed the mage rather than only wounding him, and her gaze reflected the inner conflict. The knights began tracing where the shots came from to locate the shooter. This was an important tactical question. The magician ordered his subordinates to shield him with their bodies and keep fighting. The commander attempts to retreat as a rescue maneuver. As the magician escaped, a hairy man appeared and condemned him for fleeing, saying it exposed internal discord which complicated the enemy's structure. The knights stepped onto the ground and saw a small gang of unfamiliar people whose presence made the battle more uncertain. Makio and his allies realized they were adventurers, a loose, disorganized group able to influence events, but their intentions were unclear. Makio asked Sylvia if she knew these people, his voice tight as he waited for an answer. Sylvia admitted they were her father's enemies and said she was afraid, aware of the danger as they approached. Her words made the situation more serious. That gang was the rebels' main force, grinning as if ready for new schemes and battles, which meant many trials and conflicts still lay ahead. The rebels met the knights, who admitted they did not know how to proceed, and their faces showed confusion and dismay because the road was blocked and no safe way forward was visible. The rebel leader frowned at the knights, his stare falling first to their shoes. That look held cold resolve and made the consequences clear. Suddenly, blood began pouring out on the knights, spilling right in front of them. Everyone froze, stunned and unsure how it had started. The atmosphere grew heavy and uneasy, as if a curse had descended on the meeting place. On closer inspection, they realized it was not human blood, but the blood of monsters, its smell and power filling the air with danger, an ominous sign that the enemy was using evil forces for his own purposes. In a cold, hard voice, a man declared that anyone who tried to cross the bridge was doomed, and his words sounded like a death sentence, showing he was not joking and was ready for a brutal confrontation. Confused and afraid, the knights watched as weapons and magic threatened them. Their fists clenched, but they were frozen by indecision. The helmeted man with a shield said firmly that the situation was not a joke and they needed to prepare for the toughest fight. His voice was steady and determined as he prepared to lead his warriors into battle. Perched on the hill, Makio carefully watched the scene below. He noticed the soldiers' behavior had changed, becoming more cautious and sometimes panicky. Mashio noted that monsters and plants were killing soldiers with surprising ease, making the fighting more dangerous for both sides, and realized this tactic was changing the course of the conflict. The man said he would create a safe route for their troops to ensure the invasion succeeds. Brave, experienced soldiers were needed to go ahead and clear the way. When soldiers lost belief in success and saw no chance of victory, many panicked and fled, and their fear and doubt broke morale, creating chaos and weakening the ranks. A soldier stepped on a mine. The explosion rocked everyone nearby, was deafening, and caused terrible damage. Panic among the troops grew worse. A long-haired man watched the explosion in disbelief, as a bear suddenly appeared nearby and rushed after the fleeing soldiers, adding to the chaos and fear, and making the situation even more unstable. Explosions erupted across the area as the heroes watched, each blast heightening the fear and tension in their chests, and though they knew the enemy was taking heavy losses, the situation remained dangerous. Mashio admitted everything that was happening was unexpected and overwhelming, not what he had anticipated, and the intensity and scale of events revealed new challenges for him. The girls said using soldiers as pawns was cruel and wrong, and condemned those tactics, because honor and justice mattered to them even in war, and they worried about people's lives. Mashio replied that the enemies would arrive sooner or later because they were far more numerous, and he accepted there was no retreat, so they had to prepare for a decisive battle. Sitting in a circle, the boys revised their plans to adapt to the battle's new conditions, and their discussion helped them unite and find new solutions, leaving them determined and ready. Sylvia called out to the boys, her voice trembling with fear as she realized the situation was becoming critical, and her words made everyone focus immediately. She reminded them that these people had killed her father, and that was why she wanted to destroy them. Understanding her reasons, the hero told her to abandon the idea. He also noticed the man with the skin on his shoulders was very strong and dangerous, which commanded respect and required special attention, and his unusual aura inspired fear. Makio had never seen such a powerful aura before, and it made him take the upcoming battle very seriously because they would be facing a formidable opponent. Sylvia was deeply upset that she could not carry out her plan, and the delays and uncertainty weighed on her. Mashio insisted they stick to the plan they'd already made and stay focused on the main goal. The girls supported him, saying they agreed and were ready to act. Watching the girls, he stood with Sylvia quietly behind him, observing and offering support. The mood was tense, but it united them. He knew Sylvia's unhappiness could cause problems in their actions, so he had to keep the team united. Whispering his name as if pondering something important, her voice held determination and hope. She suddenly shared an idea, clearly confident and inspired, and it became a turning point in their plans. Till and Jennifer pulled harder on the cart, loaded with heavy meat supplies. Despite the cart's size, the load far exceeded its capacity, and the meat was gathered into one large pile. Knowing it was vital to their plan, the tired girls loaded every meat supply they could find onto a cart and planned to use it carefully. They met the protagonist, who gave clear instructions to head south into the deep forest. The route would be hard but necessary to complete their mission. Once more the girls placed their hands on the cart and braced for the journey ahead, tired but determined to keep moving as the cart rolled slowly and steadily forward. We first planned a U-shaped passage on the south side to raise the ground, lure the animals to the right spot, and control their movement, which was the key. Next, meat was scattered around the dead-end area to lure animals. The scent drew many animals in, making an effective trap. This step required precise attention to detail. The meat in the dead end drew in many animals, mostly mammals, and it would be used to gather a large group, so they began watching closely. A huge heap of animals was crowded together, too many to count and from many species, ranging from tiny creatures to large predators, all tightly packed into a living mass. Watching from the side, the protagonist carefully assessed the scene and picked out a green tiger, a dangerous lamia, a golden bat, and a mighty forest giant. The protagonist watched closely, missing nothing and waiting for the right moment, with eyes focused and alert while analyzing every natural signal. He asked Heli, who stayed on the mountain, how the enemy was doing, hoping to get fresh information to adjust his actions correctly. Heli stood against a sky of billowing black smoke and described what she saw: bloodied soldiers running through the forest, falling into pits and explosions. Watching with her elven gaze, she saw the trap set beforehand would soon exhaust their resources, and a new phase would begin. The preset traps stopped soon, as the elf predicted. The pits were crowded with soldiers, and the hills had no more explosions, so the enemy no longer faced serious resistance. They saw no sign of sleep on the field, yet assumed the soldiers walking there were now asleep or in a stupor. This made the situation even more dangerous for them. A quiet, ominous lull settled over the field. Then a long-haired man, imposing and determined, walked up to them. He slung a huge sword over his shoulder and ordered the bow-wielding girl and the tall man wearing a helmet and armor to move forward. The soldiers cleared the path, allowing the unit to move deeper into the forest. That let the operation continue without delay. Everyone stayed alert to their surroundings. A man warned everyone to be careful and watch the local plants and animals. The forest was full of dangers, and any careless action could lead to disaster. They knew they had to stay alert. Till gathered magical energy inside herself, preparing to use her power. Waiting for the signal, she remained patient and focused on gathering magic, knowing her role was crucial to the plan. Jennifer was surprised that Till could build up such powerful magic, and the lack of any signal from Mashio left her worried. Hidden in the foliage, the protagonist watched the enemies pass without noticing his hiding spot. Remaining unseen, he waited patiently for the right moment to act. His patience was about to be rewarded. After the opponents moved far enough away, the protagonist stepped out of his hiding place. Determined and focused, he began his part of the plan. The time for decisive action had come. First, Maquio had to use his magic to cut off the enemy's escape route, a crucial move to trap them and prevent them from getting away, and his power would change the course of events. Then a large mound of earth fell from above onto the dead end and blocked the way back. Trapped, the enemy could not retreat. That move was crucial to the operation's success. Having spent far more magic than he expected, the hero knew his energy was nearly gone, but he had completed his part of the plan. Fatigue was setting in, but the mission was accomplished. After the explosions, the long-haired man grew wary, sensing something was wrong. Seeing the situation had shifted, he went on full alert. His focus was at its limit. The protagonist's magic signaled the girls. Jennifer understood immediately, told Till to start, and their coordination worked flawlessly. When Till heard the signal, she immediately began her part of the plan. Releasing the built-up magic, she sent it into the gathered animals, putting it into action. The animals sensed something was wrong. Tension rose as magical waves hit, and they scrambled to escape as their panic grew. The plan started to work. Animals were forced into a corner, leaving little room to move. Space grew cramped and escape became difficult. They clustered into a dense mass. Space tightened around them, and to escape the fire they huddled closer together. Some climbed on top of others to get away. Their fear was clear. Running toward the dead end, the protagonist said they had a lot of work to do, realized the fight was not over and there was still much left to do, and spoke with a steady, determined voice. Climbing to the top of the dead end, he got a clearer view of his surroundings, watched the gathered animals, and assessed the situation with a sharp, attentive gaze. Jennifer spotted him and called his name to get his attention, aware of how important his role was at that moment, and her voice was urgent and supportive. Sweating from running and the previous spell, the protagonist aimed his hand for the next stage of the plan and gathered all his concentration to carry it out.